This guy shows up to a military entrance exam just to prove he's built different, and the moment he arrives, they place a giant red crystal in front of him. Now this thing is ridiculously hard. The instructors are basically waiting for this rookie to shatter his own arm, but Kim Min-joon walks up, smiles, and absolutely deletes the crystal with a single punch. Not just cracks or damages it, bro turns the whole thing into premium dust. The instructors are staring at the rubble like their brains just blue-screened. Nobody can figure out how this random recruit pulled that off, but that's only the beginning. Next comes the actual competition against the other recruits. And honestly, there's only one person here who can even pretend to keep up with him. Sun Eun-seo, the general's daughter. This girl has spent her entire life grinding for the top spot. Years of training, years of suffering, and years of being told she's a genius. Then Min-joon shows up and starts speedrunning her dreams. The recruits have to dodge rubber bullets. She does great, but our guy does it better. Next they have to race through a dungeon rocky alley. She's running for first place with all her might, but Min-joon casually runs past her like he's late for lunch. At this point, Yoon-seo is probably filing a complaint with reality itself. Nothing makes sense. Every challenge she's supposed to dominate, this guy clears with zero effort and wins. So how is he so ridiculously overpowered? Well, there's one tiny detail nobody knows. Kim Min-joon didn't come here from Earth. My guy just returned from another world. And unlike every isekai protagonist who loses everything after coming back, he kept his dark magic powers. Min-joon spent years purging the land of Isgard from evil, and he finally brought the well-deserved peace to this world. But he doesn't get any credit for the favor he did. After all, he's a cursed mage, one who dabbles in the powers of darkness. With the mission complete, he finally meets the goddess who is responsible for summoning him in this world. He kept his end of the bargain by eradicating the menace. Now it's the goddess's turn to return the favor and give him the ticket back to his planet, Earth. The goddess insists he stay a little longer, but Min-joon's done doing her dirty work. It's finally time to embrace the Korean fried chicken he's been missing so much. Since the goddess knows next to nothing about crispy fried chicken, or something called the internet, she can't offer him any of that, so she eventually decides to send him back. With the teleportation circle activated, she removes the saint's protection that always stopped Min-joon from using his powers on her. Once that's gone, the final step is stripping Min-joon of his dark powers before sending him back. But Min-joon was already prepared to see this day, and he did exactly what he had to. He betrayed the goddess to keep his dark powers all to himself. Before vanishing into the multi-dimensional portal he created with his own dark magic, he flipped her the middle finger. And with that, he disappeared, leaving the helpless, angry blondie gritting her teeth behind. Then, Min-joon reappears in his room and immediately checks his phone. He'd missed the feeling of holding it after emerging from what he considered the hellhole of Dungeon Power Fighter, so he's thrilled to be back. But he quickly notices something odd, that there is no network, no internet. Meanwhile, an army unit gears up for a raid. The crew questions Corporal Choi In-ho about why regular soldiers were being dispatched on such a mission. In-ho, just as clueless, told them to ask the administrative officers, reminding them that a corporal isn't aware of all the top-secret intel. In-ho signals, and the soldiers move in sync to attack. It's been 2 years since Min-joon was summoned, a memory that still clearly irritates him. His phone, thanks to autosync, still works, but he has no one to contact. As he walks outside, the lack of Wi-Fi and open stores in the neighborhood strikes him as odd. Suddenly, the army unit spots a man casually walking, catching them off guard, especially since Min-joon is busy complaining about Isgard being a trashy place. The soldiers, certain this is a restricted area, wonder why the guards aren't doing their job. They call out to Min-joon, who's initially surprised but then assumes they must be trainees. He assures them he's just passing through, but then the soldiers scream, seeing a horrifying creature leaping at him. Min-joon casually turns his head, only to see a creepy wolf lunging his way. Min-joon isn't even the least bit concerned when the soldiers yell at him to dodge. That horrifying beast is charging straight at him, ready to tear him apart. He's seriously pissed, wondering why this stupid mutt, who can't even take a single punch, is showing up now. But just as he tries to tap into his power, that devil-may-care attitude vanishes fast. He can't summon his demonic energy, not even a flicker. Then he goes for the only option left and stops the wolf with his bare hands, slamming it into the ground with brute force like he doesn't give a damn. The soldiers' jaws hit the floor in shock when they see the impact of Min-joon's smack leave a dent in the ground. Their faces go pale at the sight of such raw strength. Min-joon stares the wolf dead in the eyes and says he's no loser, even without his dark powers. Even if he's grown weaker, there's no way he's letting some measly scum of a monster get the best of him. He suddenly recalls that warrior putting him through a deadly workout routine, lifting boulders like his life depended on it. The memory makes him weirdly nostalgic for Isgard's brutal training. Still, he doesn't get why a monster like this is even in this world. Just as he's about to question the soldiers, he notices they're already scared out of their wits. Later in the jeep, the soldiers have no idea why this weirdo went so hard on the wolf, slamming it like it owed him money. One of them even says that what he did could land him in prison, but their commander had already told them to stop making a scene out of this, and he let that slide. That's when one of them turns to Minjun and asks if he's really clueless about what's been going on lately. The so-called World Walker says he's unfamiliar with the land, keeping the whole otherworlder thing under wraps. Deep down, he's not even sure this is the Korea he remembers. He has no clue what's happened in the past 2 years. He recalls that around the age of 7, the phenomenon of dungeons first appeared, and with them came waves of vicious monsters. He remembers the soldiers fighting desperately against them, but alongside all that horror, something else rose too: superhumans, known as the Awakened. Their powers weren't just human, they were something far beyond. The Awakened had teamed up with the Hunter Corps, a newly formed military unit, and together they wiped out the monster swarm in no time. So, before Minjun got summoned by that skank of a goddess, Korea hadn't faced anything too dangerous that could threaten civilian zones. Out of nowhere, he senses something off about Dungeon Power Fighter and checks his signal again. That's when it hits him: the server isn't completely gone yet. The realization pisses him off. All that hell he went through, only to return to this mess. On top of that, Sparky is itching to play the game, or at least see if the server's still running, but he ends up cursing the network in frustration. Meanwhile, one of the soldiers doesn't buy this loser's act about knowing nothing, while the whole world is clearly upside down. Still, after witnessing Minjun's raw strength, he starts getting really nervous, thinking maybe this dude's got a story behind him that explains way more than he's letting on. Right then, Sparky grabs the soldier's attention and asks if game developers still even exist in the world. Then, out of nowhere, he follows up by asking if people still safely evacuate and manage to get jobs at game companies or something. Also, this deadbeat demands to know if all the buildings were destroyed, including the server storage systems. He's digging for details, wondering why everything's such a mess. The soldier says he'll explain, proudly mentioning he scored an A+ in monster theory and dungeonology at university. Minjun's stunned that a university even teaches stuff like that now, but the soldier confirms it's pretty rare to find decent teachers on the topic. He starts explaining that the real problem started about 2 years ago with the weird dungeon phenomenon. One day, dungeons just started popping up more frequently for no clear reason and began expanding. The worst part is that the sheer number of giant monsters started rising non-stop, forcing their way into the human world. Eventually, the military couldn't keep the situation under control, and some civilian zones had to be locked down. Since then, the army's been throwing everything they've got at the problem with all sorts of methods, but they're seriously short on people. Throughout the entire story, Minjun couldn't care less. He's only bothered by one thing. The soldier still hasn't answered whether game companies are up and running or not. This dude just wants to play Dungeon Power Fighter really badly. When asked his age, Minjun casually says he's 21. That instantly reminds the soldier that Minjun should be enlisting soon, warning him that half of his 20s are about to vanish into thin air. That shocks Sparky, who blurts out that the Hunter Corps serve 5 years and the regular troops do 3. The soldier corrects this boy, saying that under the current mess, all troops serve for 5 years, no exceptions. If Minjun is really 21, he's pretty sure the guy should have already received his enlistment letter by now. This manaless loser is losing his mind just thinking he'd get to chill and play Dungeon Power Fighter for a bit. But life clearly had other plans and threw him straight into the mud. It's honestly hard for the guy to even process this mess. And now the thought of giving up 5 years of his life, when he hasn't even managed to connect to the server yet, is practically boiling his brain. Out of nowhere, Minjun gets a ping from military manpower, assigning him, Kim Minjun, to enlist at the recruit training center. Sparky's totally whacked to see how serious they are about this, especially since his enlistment date is literally tomorrow. He wonders if the military just spams people now, because the timing feels way too on point. That cracks up the soldier boy, who says Gang 1's known for pulling that kind of crap. In a flash, Minjun's at his wit's end, yelling at the guy like, how the hell is this even possible without a physical exam? In his defense, Soldier Boy already mentioned they're running low on manpower, so now the physicals are handled directly at the training center. As for the notice, he figures Minjun probably just saw it late, but still suggests checking out the PC room near the evacuation center, just in case. Suddenly something clicks in his mind. Long ago, when Minjun's parents went missing, he filled the void in his life with games. Then, as a lonely 12th grader, he was summoned to Isgard, the forgotten paradise of humanity. Now, back in the present, sitting in a PC room, Minjun is crying tears of joy while playing Dungeon Power Fighter again. He's soaking in the comfort of these little gaming booths, loving how the game still runs just the way he remembers. Sparky's practically ready to bow down and thank the owner of this place for keeping it alive even during a full-blown crisis. Out of nowhere, he orders a hot dog, and the waitress looks completely baffled, wondering just how much this dude can eat. After enjoying the game to his heart's content, Minjun slips back into reality, now wondering if all of this is even real. He pulls up the internet to check news articles and tries to get a grip on the situation. That's when he reads that this year's monster-related damages are 48% higher than last year. On top of that, the Hunter Corps is reportedly prioritizing citizen safety as the number of attacks keeps climbing, with the government scrambling to find solutions. Min Jun starts believing every word that the soldier guy said, including the part about being enlisted by the Military Manpower Administration. Now, the message had clearly mentioned that his enlistment was set for tomorrow. Min Jun can't help but think that if he still had his powers from Isgard, he could have cleared all the dungeons by himself without breaking a sweat. But for some reason, his body is completely depleted of demonic energy. It feels drained of his main source of dark magic. Still, with the raw strength he's got left, he figures he might be able to take down those dungeons on his own anyway. His intense aura creeps through the room, throwing everyone off guard as they stare at this crackhead. With a wicked laugh, Min Jun decides to take it all into his own hands. The next day, this world walker casually strolls into the training center, snack in hand. He's oddly excited to see so many people enlisting today, even though everyone else looks gloomy, hugging their loved ones goodbye. Then, suddenly, an announcement calls all the new soldiers to gather in the auditorium. Min Jun raises an eyebrow, wondering if this is actually going to be harder than life in Isgard. Inside the auditorium, the soldiers are straight up nasty, barking at the new recruits to stand up and yelling at them for moving like snails. One's shouting to keep their posture straight and not look behind, while another demands they push the person in front like their lives depend on it. Min Jun can't help but find these instructors oddly polite compared to that absolute jerk he trained under back in Isgard. After a while, the battalion commander steps up and grabs everyone's attention, asking anyone who applied for the Hunter Corps but didn't get selected to raise their hand. He explains that treatment differs massively between the Hunter Corps and regular troops. The Hunters start out with a base pay of 3 million won, which gets a few heads turning. When no one moves, the commander says it's fine, until he spots one volunteer. Min Jun is called to step forward, and he decides this is his moment to shine. Without hesitation, he leaps into the air, punching a dent into the ground from the sheer force of his takeoff. He lands right next to the commander, smooth as ever, leaving everyone stunned with their jaws practically on the floor. That's when he introduces himself with confidence, saying, "Kim Min Jun, applying for the Hunter Corps." Back in Isgard, deep within the Forgotten Canyon of the northern region, the mountains are littered with caves, each darker and more twisted than the last. It's there that Min Jun fully accepts the brutal reality that being a dark mage is a job with no end to its torment. There's no character worse off than this. Sure, dark mages come packed with insane skills, but once they run out of their fuel, they're done for. All that's left is a body barely holding it together, stuck in a role that grinds you down until there's nothing left. It's not like mana just naturally restores over time like it does for regular mages. For dark mages, the only way to recover it is by taking down monsters using demonic energy. But even then, replenishing dark energy while actively using it is a total grind is super inefficient and barely worth it. On top of that, Min Jun could never find reliable party members, since the dark mage image had such a terrible reputation. So if Min Jun ever runs out of dark energy, he's basically as good as dead down there. Now he asks what the best method is for a dark mage to recover demonic energy. But sadly, this guy's so damn lonely. There's no one around to answer his pop quiz or listen to his tragic monologue except a bunch of monster corpses. He starts wondering if it's because everyone else is already dead. Suddenly he hears something creeping up behind him. Turns out, it's the Forgotten Canyon's hidden dungeon boss, Arachnest. This creepy, oversized spider beast crawls into view while Min Jun casually thinks maybe the dungeon boss could have answered his question. He even says the beast should have shown up sooner, because he was dying of boredom waiting. As Arachnest notices her crushed babies scattered all over the ground, she lets out a bone-chilling screech. Min Jun just shrugs it off, cracking a joke about her breath reeking so there's no need for a reply. Then, without a shred of hesitation, he slams a punch right into her face and says the answer's wrong. With his demonic energy pouring out of him, Min Jun says the answer's real simple. That is just to beat the monster with a maxed out strength. That day, Meanold, who's actually Kim Min Jun, stood at the peak of dark magic in Isgard, and that was 645 days before he returned to Earth. Back in the present, the commander confirms his name, Kim Min Jun, and tells him to wait there until the Hunter Corps unit arrives. Min Jun's just vibing, low-key thrilled to see a whole commander casually making him coffee. Then the commander asks if there's any special reason he wants to join the Hunter Corps. He's clearly weirded out by this kid, especially since so many Hunter Corps members are bailing and returning to the regular army, even with their powers, now that things are getting worse out there. With a hint of a smirk, Min Jun simply says he's got some business in the dungeons, leaving the commander completely speechless. A second later, the commander bursts out laughing, thinking Min Jun's dungeon comment was just a joke. He even reassures him that he won't be charged for smashing the auditorium floor. Little did he know, this world walker wasn't joking at all. In Korea, all dungeons are managed by the military, and the Hunter Corps, a highly skilled elite unit, is given top priority to investigate those dungeons and handle monster subjugation. Members of this unit can rank up based on ability, meaning there's no limit to how fast someone can climb the ladder if they've got the power. By enlisting in the Hunter Corps, Min Jun gets his license to enter dungeons and wipe out the trash lurking inside using his demonic energy. From there, he starts daydreaming about racing through the ranks, recovering his lost powers along the way. The thought alone makes this scheming maniac chuckle, imagining himself hitting 10 stars within 5 years, clearing out every dungeon in sight. That'd buy just enough time for Dungeon Power Fighter to finally roll out its fourth awakening while he soaks up the glory and the big paycheck of a public hero. Just then, Sergeant Lee Sung-ho of the Hunter Corps reports to the commander. The commander greets him warmly and introduces Min Jun as the new recruit. Min Jun's straight up stunned to see a battalion commander speaking so formally to a sergeant. Sung-ho turns to Min Jun and bluntly asks if he really has special powers. If he's a born hunter, he should have access to a status window. So the sergeant insists that Sparky read out all his stats. Min Jun can't help but wonder if all the Hunter Corps members are this pushy, but whatever. He gives in and does what they ask. Come to think of it, he remembers having a status window back in Isgard too, but he barely used the thing that only showed number values and stats. Now the lad's actually curious to see how the status window works in this world, but the second it appears, he's completely thrown off. Sung-ho immediately presses him, asking what he's seeing, but Min Jun just gives him a nervous smile. With an awkward chuckle, he says the window's showing an error. Sung-ho's expression goes stiff, as if his brain just hit a glitch trying to process what he heard. Somewhere in Gyeonggi-do, at the Hunter Corps Training Center, the commander starts with some small talk, saying he last saw her in Hwachun. It's been 10 years. He admits he never imagined running into Son Yoon-seo here, of all places. She quickly corrects him, saying she's not a hunter yet, just a new recruit who enlisted today. Still, she wants to know if she's only being called in because of her father's status, making it clear she has no interest in getting special treatment during training. The commander laughs it off, assuring her it has nothing to do with General Sun and that she won't be getting any kind of special pass either. He also reminds her that the Hunter Corps isn't some easy organization, something her father must have mentioned already. With such a renowned rookie enlisting, the commander figures he'd exchange a few words of encouragement before the girl gets super busy. He knows it couldn't have been easy for her to enlist as a regular soldier, instead of walking in as an executive, saying they're always short on people like her. So he thanks her both as a citizen and as a soldier of the nation. Meanwhile, Yoon-seo's clearly embarrassed but politely thanks the commander. Just then, a van rolls in, and the commander lets her know she might be meeting an interesting comrade on board. He asks if she'd like to go greet him together, which catches her completely off guard. Meanwhile, Min Jun is hyped to finally step into the Hunter Corps Training Center. The building's massive, and he's not even sure how much taxpayer money went into it, so the first thing he asks is whether there's a PC room. Sung-ho throws shade at this weirdo, telling him not to get too excited since he's not officially in the Hunter Corps yet. Just because he's a special case, Seung-ho's been given the job of testing him out. That arrogant tone ticks Sparky off, and he's ready to curse this jerk out. According to Sung-ho, he would have already dumped Min Jun back in the Yongchang if the head office hadn't specifically requested to test him. Moreover, Sung-ho adds that once he proves Min Jun's nothing but a fraud, he'll be handed over to the military police without wasting a second. Min Jun's not loving this guy's attitude. He's way too stingy and full of himself, but the dude keeps it together and demands to know the details of the test. That's when Sung-ho shows a giant red crystal and tells him that if he can move it even an inch within 10 minutes, he'll pass. The soldier guy says he's ready to see if this so-called talent is worth the hype for signing up with the Hunter Corps. The red stone is no ordinary rock. It's a byproduct formed inside dungeons, known for being insanely dense, hard, and heavy, making it pretty much impossible for any average recruit to even budge. Min Jun strolls past Sung-ho, casually saying he's glad the test is this simple, which definitely bruises Sung-ho's ego. Sung-ho knows the whole thing is a dumb way to measure someone's status window, but he gets it. There's probably been plenty of frauds with mediocre abilities trying to sneak their way into the Hunter Corps, so this kind of test weeds out the fakes. Meanwhile, Sung-ho had heard rumors about this guy jumping 5 meters straight onto the podium, but the whole status window error thing still doesn't add up. There are a few others watching Min Jun's test now, including Commander Choi and Yoon-seo. Choi figures this guy probably showed off some crazy physical abilities to the battalion commander at the training center just to get here this fast. He also tells Yoon-seo that Min Jun's status window came up with an error. The old man's never heard of anything like that before, but he's got high hopes for this new recruit. Min Jun stares at the red stone and instantly remembers it from his time in Isgard. That ridiculously heavy rock was scattered all over the dungeons there, but a chunk this size, he could move it without breaking a sweat. He hyped up, packs a punch, wondering if maybe this thing stores some demonic energy too. So, the brute winds up and smashes the entire stone into pieces in one shot. Too bad though, it turns out it's got nothing. Commander Choi and Yoon-seo are left with their jaws on the floor in pure shock. Even Sergeant Sung-ho looks like his eyes might pop out, calling Min Jun a straight-up crazy monster. Later, Nam In-hyuk is completely out of breath, drenched in sweat, as he drags himself up the stairs with the other recruits. Even before joining the Hunter Corps, he knew the training wasn't going to be normal, but now he's really feeling something's off. Once the training period ends, they'll be heading into real combat. But before that, they're stuck with 4 weeks of absolute hell. That means strapping on sandbags from the very first session and climbing the infamous 6,000 steps. As if things weren't already brutal, there's this devil of an instructor, Sergeant Lee Sung-ho, constantly breathing down their necks. He checks their finishing times. That much was expected, but this kind of crude physical training only boosts their stats a little, and it's pushing most of the recruits to the edge of collapse. Nam In-hyuk always figures Hunter Corps recruits had to endure a lot and just suck it up, but now he's not so sure about this lunatic running the show. Meanwhile, Min-jun's having the time of his life, running like he's some kind of free elf. In-hyuk's starting to question whether the problem is them, not him. Min-jun feels like his body is floating on air, and if he still had his demonic energy, he swears he'd be flying. Sparky actually finds this so-called hellish Hunter Corps training kind of sweet. The military uniforms look stylish compared to the rags he wore in Isgard, and the food is way better than expected. Even the schedule's a win. Once the evening roll call is done, they get actual free time and can crash for the night. Also, he heard there's a PC room right inside the facility, and it's apparently just as good as anything out in the city. As long as he follows the rules, no one's going to bother him during his free time. Though Min-jun had every intention of ditching the place if it turned out to be a drag, it turns out the Hunter Corps has everything he could ask for, including grueling drills, delicious meals, solid pay, and even time to play games. He dashes up the stairs shouting that the Hunter Corps is the best thing ever. In-hyuk, still trying to catch his breath, can't wrap his head around what kind of fuel this insane monster runs on to move like that. In a flash, Sung-ho is left completely stunned as he sees Min-jun reach the top way faster than expected. Normally, it takes about an hour for the average recruit to finish the climb, but this guy crushed it in record time. Min-jun's up there enjoying the view, dancing around Sung-ho, and reminding him of the promise he made that anyone who finishes under 30 minutes gets an outing pass. With no choice, Sung-ho hands it over while Min-jun starts plotting where he should use it. Sung-ho cracks a smile, wondering if there's ever been a recruit who got an outing pass. Still, he knows that high stats or raw strength alone aren't enough, as the real test is how fast someone can react to monsters. That's what truly matters in the Hunter Corps, and for that reason, he swears he'll be keeping a close eye on Kim Min-jun. Meanwhile, the rest of the recruits are whining, grumbling about how impossible it is to keep up with this kind of training every day. Then suddenly, In-hyuk yells out that his stats went up by 1, and the others quickly rally around to congratulate him like it's the biggest win of the day. Now everyone's caught up checking their stats, and Min-jun is straight up shocked when he sees how hyped the recruits are over just 1 stat point going up. This dude can't help but remember his brutal Isgard training under that insane warrior who forced him to earn 10 stat points a day, like it was nothing. Meanwhile, one of the guys asks if Min-jun's planning to use his outing pass, but Sparky's not so sure yet. The others look at him with envy, saying they heard from another instructor that no one has ever managed to earn an outing pass from Sergeant Sung-ho until now. Suddenly, everyone starts crowding around him, throwing out questions about his workout routine and how he got so strong. Min-jun's caught off guard by the whole scene, realizing people are actually chatting and laughing with him. It's totally new. Back in Isgard as a dark mage, everyone avoided him like the plague. Just walking by him was considered bad luck. But here, it's different, and communication isn't bad as he thought. These guys are already making plans to hit the PC room later, and it gets Min-jun all excited. He's even more shocked to hear that the PC room's open at this hour. Now that's a win. While enjoying his time in the PC room, the clock hits 9, and Min-jun figures it's time to grab 2 hours of sleep. Back in Isgard, even getting 1 hour was considered a luxury, so 2 hours felt like a full-on deep sleep. With that kind of rest, he's confident he can recover just enough energy to keep grinding games every day. The others in the room are stunned, watching this absolute maniac still playing that game. Next up, the recruits are hit with another brutal drill with no extra distance this time, but they have to maintain a consistent speed. Anyone who fails to complete 40 kilometers within 2 hours doesn't get breakfast. Later on, Min-jun casually gloats about hitting 10 max levels yesterday, which ticks off In-hyuk, who's struggling to catch his breath after the drill. He's annoyed that Min-jun isn't even sweating. What gets him even more is knowing the guy played games all night and only slept 2 hours in the last 4 weeks. When someone asks him how he's still standing, Min-jun just grins and grabs everyone's attention, saying he brought enough water to share with all his comrades. The guy loses it, praising his insane stamina and calling him his dear comrade. They're practically dying to get a sip of what now feels like some kind of mythical elixir. Boys line up like baby chicks ready for Min-jun pouring a sip of water in their mouth. In the middle of their chatter, someone suddenly calls for their attention, and it's Lee, dropping the bomb that the lieutenant is seriously disappointed in all of them. It's the final week of training, and only half the recruits have managed to meet the standard. He straight up calls them the most pathetic squadron of all time. Minjun can't help but wonder why this old guy is talking in the third person like some ancient sage. Lee doesn't stop there though. He throws shade at everyone, saying if they get deployed after training ends, half of them are heading straight for their deathbeds. That kind of mindset, according to him, is basically a one-way ticket to heaven. He boldly claims that there's no way any of them will survive the final stage of training, which is something called the dungeon assessment training. Normally, once all the monsters inside a dungeon are wiped out, the dungeon disappears. But some of them don't vanish. They turn into what's called transforming dungeons. These dungeons constantly shift their internal structure, changing layouts and environments on a regular basis. That makes them the perfect spot for trainees to get real-life dungeon experience. And that hardcore simulation is what they call the dungeon assessment training. Just hearing the name sends shivers down the recruits' spines, so they already know they're in for something brutal. With Lee cranking up the tension, he seems to enjoy it, saying recruits need to be handled like racehorses. For real discipline, you need a heavy whip to keep them in line and then toss them a carrot later. He assures them they'll make it through if they just use their brains. To sweeten the deal, he announces that the recruit with the highest score will earn a 2-night, 3-day vacation pass. The old man believes this little reward will light a fire under them and push them to work harder, asking if that news doesn't make their blood boil. But the recruits just stare at him blankly, watching him tap the stage like he's lost it. But no one responds. He's trying so hard to hype them up, but it feels like he's talking to a wall. That is until he spots one guy who actually looks thrilled by the news, and that just makes the rest of them more nervous. The next day, the whole squad shows up with their jaws on the floor, stunned by how massive the dungeon really is. Minjun, on the other hand, couldn't care less. On the day of the dungeon assessment training, the recruits are full of nerves, wondering what kind of nightmare awaits them inside. Suddenly, a jeep rolls onto the scene, scaring the crap out of everyone. They're all thinking, why would a military truck be out here of all places? Their panic spikes when they realize the jeep is loaded with cages, and inside those cages are real monsters. With terrifying noises echoing from the cages, the recruits quickly realize they're filled with hounds that send a chill down their spines. One of them even collapses from the shock, while another is already looking for an escape route. Meanwhile, Minjun just sees them as oversized puppies, comparing them to Chihuahuas or Maltese in his head. Lee is fuming as he watches the recruits tremble at the sight of monsters they're supposed to be trained to face. He orders them to form teams of 4 and head into the transforming dungeon, where they must defeat a hound within 1 hour and return. He lays down the instructions. If they get hurt, they better work on their core strength. If they're scared, they should use their brains and fight with their spirit. Sungho steps up to announce that they'll be going in one by one, so it's time to gear up and get moving. Next up is the Hunter Corps' exclusive safety suit, the Mid-2, designed to protect the physical body during battle. Once everyone slips into the gear, they start trembling like scared chickens, wondering if anything in the world could be tougher than this armor. Meanwhile, Minjun is silently judging the suit, thinking it's insanely uncomfortable and clearly built for defense only. He can't believe something this stiff and clunky costs around 50 million. From the smell alone, he figures these suits have been used to hell and back, soaked in everyone's passion and sweat. That's when Sparky throws out a bold question, asking if they managed to take down the hounds, which means they can ditch these suits. At first, Lieutenant Lee looks thrown off by the idea, but when he sees it's Minjun, the #1 ranking recruit, he gives in and grants permission. Still, Lee doesn't let him off that easily. He reminds Minjun that he's not allowed to steal the spotlight. He's expected to show real teamwork, and now, everyone's going to be watching how the top-ranked recruit handles things when it comes to taking care of others. When it comes to defeating a hound, Sparky acts like the whole thing's a walk in the park, claiming all he needs to do is tell his teammates what to do. Out of nowhere, Minjun yells that he's got the perfect plan. 2 guys actually lean in, curious to hear him out, but then this weirdo casually drops the most brutal advice ever. Just grab the hound by the legs and snap its back in half. That should do the trick if it jumps at them. And if the beast somehow survives that, he says they should fold its back and rip it apart. After delivering that horrifying strategy, Sparky demands to know if they got it. The recruits just stand there, staring at him in stunned silence, completely speechless. Right then, Lee shouts at the sergeants to release the hounds, and Sungho pulls open the cage gates, letting the beasts loose. But instead of attacking the recruits, the menacing creatures bolt straight back into the dungeon. Minjun casually points out that the wolves probably saw the door to their home and headed for it. Surprisingly, his logic clicks with everyone, and the recruits start praising his sharp mind for understanding the hound's psychology so fast. Out of nowhere, Lee storms over and demands to know if they really have the guts to just stand around and laugh on these holy training grounds. That roar knocks the wind out of everyone. Lee then drops the bomb that they've been selected as the first team to enter. It doesn't matter to Minjun, but the other 3 are mentally short-circuiting from the shock, completely stunned to be thrown in first. With no time to process it, they march toward the dungeon gate. Among them, Sparky's only real motivation is getting this annoying suit off the second he finishes the kill. With that, Lee announces the start of the training, alerting the instructor team to stand by and monitor everything closely. Their job is to control the situation if things spiral out of hand and the recruits end up in real danger. Hidden from view, the instructor team keeps a sharp eye on the trainees from their cover. One of them quietly reports to Corporal Kim Ho-jun that there's only a single team of 4 entering, with no other parties involved. That's when he spots a familiar face, none other than Kim Min-jun, the recruit marked for special attention. He's the one who's been showing some seriously promising powers lately, with top-tier scores from the past 4 weeks. But the real question is whether this kid can live up to those numbers inside the chaos of a dungeon. No doubt about it, the first team is fired up and itching to go, already showing signs of impatience as they get ready to pounce. Min-jun feels like this whole thing is a breeze, thinking he could easily knock the hounds out with a quick smack to the head. But then again, if he takes them all out, the others won't get any experience, and that wouldn't be fair. He figures he's being super considerate. Right then, he alerts the group that the hounds are on the way, and sure enough, a pack of them creeps into view. His teammates are already starting to panic, but Min-jun tells them to chill since they're wearing insanely tough protective suits. He decides to take the lead, maybe to set an example. As soon as a hound lunges at him, he lands a brutal punch that drops the beast instantly. Another hound goes straight for one of the other recruits, biting his arm as the poor guy begs for help. Without wasting a second, Min-jun kicks the hound off him, killing it too. Then, like a coach mid-game, he starts schooling them, telling the group they need to fight back when the hounds bite. If they act scared, the monsters will take advantage and treat them like easy prey. He also tells them to ditch the honorifics, since they're comrades now. Honestly, he knows 2 guys would have been dead if this weren't just a training exercise. But since they've got numbers, they need to use that to their advantage and push back hard. It'll throw the hounds off and shift the fight in their favor. Now the team is taking the lead, with Min-jun calling the shots, instructing them to corner the hound and wait for the right moment when it drops its guard. Meanwhile, the instructor team is watching all this unfold in disbelief, questioning if this guy is really just a recruit. They never expected to see fresh trainees launching themselves at hounds and choking out beasts like it's no big deal. Thanks to Min-jun, the squad is pushing through their fear and actually fighting back. Instructors even start wondering if this lunatic might be one of those rare cases, like a Hunter Corps sergeant who somehow returned to the day before his enlistment, the kind of story they usually hear in rumors. But what stands out more than his strength is how Min-jun leads the team. He's encouraging his squad, keeping them focused, and coordinating the fight with actual strategy. That leadership earns him the highest score of the group, while the rest settle for average marks. Corporal Kim Ho-jun shows up with his sidekick and officially declares the first team has passed the test. On the way out, Min-jun keeps pestering Ho-jun about whether he won the vacation pass, but Ho-jun shuts him up quickly. Min-jun jokes that they were probably worried sick about the team, calling the instructors a bunch of tsundere, which ticks Ho-jun off. Just then, something feels off. The ground starts rumbling. Ho-jun senses it too and immediately orders contact with the outside team. But Min-jun's not even fazed. He casually points out that this isn't an earthquake, it's the dungeon itself transforming. That's when the others realize the exit route is closing right in front of them. Now that the exit is closing in on itself, the recruits are scared out of their minds, shouting and asking what's happening. Even Ho-jun's face says it all, they're in serious trouble. But Min-jun already knows it's too late to leave now. The exit gate completely vanishes into thin air, leaving Ho-jun in total shock. They had made sure the transformation process only happened on a monthly cycle, so this sudden shift makes no sense. The entire internal structure of the dungeon is starting to change. To make things worse, the radio is dead, cutting off all communication. Looks like the dungeon transformed way too fast. For now, the instructor team has decided to focus on getting the recruits to safety. After finding a relatively danger-free corner, Ho-jun gathers everyone and explains that there's been an unexpected incident inside the dungeon, while his teammate stays alert, keeping watch over the surroundings. He tells the group not to worry, saying they'll wait in the current spot for an hour to see if the dungeon entrance reopens, as it says in the manual. The recruits totally buy Ho-jun's speech, relieved to think this ordeal will be over soon. They're just glad they won't be stuck here forever. To pile on the comfort, Ho-jun adds that people outside are probably already assessing the situation and preparing to send help. He also reassures them that the lieutenant will take the proper steps, so all they need to do is stay calm and wait instead of panicking. But Min-jun quietly judges the corporal, not buying a word of it. He's sure they picked this place for training after thoroughly confirming there wouldn't be any unexpected surprises like this. What's even more suspicious is how the dungeon entrance that's always open just randomly closed up out of nowhere. Suddenly, Corporal Kim Ho-jun gestures to him for a private word, and Min-jun calmly realizes that these guys know full well the situation's looking bad. There's no manual for stuff like this, and if the dungeon has really turned into an enclosed dungeon, then it's going to be way tougher to clear. This manaless guy still remembers seeing something like this back in Isgard, but it's not that bad, especially with him being here now. Meanwhile, Hojun admits this is the worst-case scenario. They're definitely in an enclosed dungeon. His buddy has no clue and is freaking out, clearly not trained for this kind of mess. Then Hojun breaks down the two special cases when a dungeon entrance disappears. The first is when the dungeon dissipates naturally after being cleared, and the second is when it turns into an enclosed dungeon, where the gate vanishes the moment someone enters from the outside. Just like that, this one's sealed shut, which also means more than one monster will appear. The only way to escape now is by defeating every single monster trapped inside. Plus, Hojun makes it clear to his teammate that no outside help is coming. They're on their own and need to break through this mess together. With 4 recruits who have 0 real battle experience and just 2 instructors, they'll have to clear the dungeon by themselves. After Hojun fills everyone in on their current situation, the recruits are visibly shaken, as expected. On top of that, Hojun has no idea what kind of monsters are crawling through this place, so things might take a deadly turn fast. Still, they can't afford to stay put. They need to keep moving while they have the strength. He regrets that the instructors weren't geared up before diving in. They just jumped in wearing tracksuits to monitor the kids. At this rate, even a few goblins could wipe them out, considering it takes Hojun around 10 minutes just to kill one. Then he glances at the back and remembers the recruits are still wearing the Hunter Core safety suits. He figures they can use those suits' defensive capabilities as part of the most realistic strategy right now. Place the recruits up front to absorb the hits while the instructors strike from behind. It's a sound plan, but the thought of using these kids as meat shields makes Hojun sick to his stomach. They've endured so much brutal training and trusted the instructors to protect them, and now his pride and self-respect won't let him turn those same kids into bait. While Minjun casually acts like he doesn't care, his teammates are panicking like crazy, especially since this whole disaster hits right when they're in the final week of their training. Out of nowhere, the manaless weirdo senses that something's off, and the instructor asks him what's going on. That's when Hojun suddenly starts screaming like something's choking him from the inside. His partner rushes over, ignoring Minjun's warning not to go near him, saying there's nothing he can do right now. But the guy rolls in anyway to check on Hojun, only to feel the exact same thing happening to him, and he collapses to the ground. From that point, Minjun steps up and takes control, telling the rest of the team to stay back, or they'll end up just like the instructors. As he checks on the two, he figures out they've only fainted and aren't in any serious danger, for now. Well, Sparky had a hunch he smelled something familiar earlier. Right then, Minjun tosses the instructors toward the recruits, telling them to catch and keep them safe near the exit. He firmly tells them not to follow him under any circumstances. One of the recruits tries to knock some sense into him, asking what he plans to do when even the instructors have fainted, clearly shaken and begging him not to go alone. But Minjun charges deeper into the dungeon without hesitation, fully aware that the risk of death excites him, especially because this time, it's real, on Earth. Still, he's confident the real reason behind the instructors collapsing is the presence of demonic energy. It doesn't even surprise him much, knowing that even awakened instructors could pass out from exposure to something like that. Even in Isgard, people are always shielded with special protection before facing monsters laced with demonic energy. That's because this stuff is way more fatal to regular humans. But for dark mages, dark energy is like plugging in a dead phone. It's their life source. After sprinting through the dungeon for a while, Minjun finally reaches the spot where this overwhelming demonic energy is radiating from. The place is dead silent, and no monsters are in sight, but that only makes him grin. He looks up at the ceiling, knowing full well that something this nasty and soaked in darkness could never hide from a dark mage's senses. And there it is, he can feel it. He never thought he'd run into a beast like the Dark Hound here of all places. But make no mistake, this isn't just another version of the regular hounds. Despite the similar names, the Dark Hound is a completely different breed and leagues more dangerous. The first time Minjun came across one in Isgard was about a year after he got summoned. Back then, he barely made it out alive. Even the monster guides on Earth wouldn't dare go near this thing. It's that brutal. The Dark Hound lunges straight from the ceiling, but Minjun doesn't even flinch. He just stands there, almost relieved to see a familiar face. With a smirk, he thanks the beast for the meal, and the next second, he plants a mouth-shattering punch right into its face, launching the monster backward like a rag doll. The Dark Hound hits the ground hard, its face bleeding and teeth shattered, while Minjun's eyes glint with hunger for its demonic energy. Even with the satisfying blow, the scent of blood in the air is thick and sickening, but he doesn't mind. It only means the recharge is about to begin. Though the scent of blood is still sickening, the insane amount of demonic energy spilling out after the Dark Hound's death is the real deal. That's exactly why taking down a beast like this isn't easy. Its venomous blood is no joke. If an ordinary human even comes in contact with it, their skin would start to rot on the spot, but none of that applies to a dark mage. As the demonic energy flows out of the Dark Hound, Minjun absorbs it all with a smug look on his face. As Minjun absorbs the demonic energy juice, he knows all the crazy side effects that come with it don't affect a dark mage at all. The dude's thrilled to finally absorb demonic energy after such a long time, feeling like he's around 5% charged now. Still, he can't wrap his head around why something like a dark hound from Isgard would show up in a place like this. He figured monsters on Earth might contain some demonic energy, but seeing the instructors faint like that raises serious questions. He doubts they've ever encountered something like this before. There was never any mention of demonic energy or dark hounds during the monster education back at the training center, and the possibility of a dark hound managing dimensional travel is out of the question. Only someone like him, who's reached the peak of dark magic, could pull off something like that. Or maybe it's something only a saint who can use God's power could pull off, since it's not an ability just anyone can access. Minjun wonders if he's just overthinking this, or if this really is the first time a dark hound has appeared in Korea. Either way, he decides to find the core and file a report, and eventually, he does. Meanwhile, Hojun slowly opens his eyes, and the recruits are all buzzing with relief to see him regaining consciousness. They crowd around asking if he's okay, but both instructors suddenly sit up straight, scaring the life out of their juniors. Hojun immediately demands a full update, checking if anyone's hurt or if anything happened while they were out. The juniors admit they thought the two turned into zombies for a second, but assure him they're all fine. Then they mention Minjun ran deeper into the dungeon by himself. That news throws Hojun completely off, and when the recruits explain what happened after he and his partner collapsed, Hojun's face twists with rage. He's furious that Minjun acted alone in a situation this dangerous, gritting his teeth at the thought. That kind of stunt is more than enough to get someone kicked out of the program. Well, he does feel like he's in no position to criticize anyone, especially after passing out instead of protecting the juniors. But then he snaps back to reality, realizing that he has to go after Kim Minjun and bring him back. Just as he's about to make a move, one of the juniors suddenly calls out, pointing ahead. To everyone's shock, Minjun walks in like nothing happened, casually carrying the dead dark hound over his shoulder. The guy even asks if everyone's doing all right, like this is just another Tuesday. The instructors freeze, jaws practically buried in the dirt, their brains short-circuiting at the sheer size of the monster. They can't even begin to process how the hell this kid took it down alone. Without skipping a beat, Minjun drops the massive hound in front of them and tells them to check it out. The instructors take a closer look and instantly realize this beast is the real reason they passed out earlier. The recruits now understand that the hounds they fought were the baby versions, and this was the real deal. No one can believe Minjun soloed such a massive creature. Then, as if on cue, the dungeon gate flickers and reappears in the same spot. Still struggling to digest what just happened, Hojun turns to Minjun and asks if he really took it down by himself. Minjun just nods with that same annoyingly calm smile. Hojun tells his partner to escort the recruits out first, promising he'll follow right after. Then, pulling Minjun aside, he firmly asks him to report every single detail of what happened to the lieutenant. That includes how both instructors fainted and left the recruits completely on their own. Hojun knows they have no excuses, even if it means being thrown into military prison. But thanks to Minjun, everyone made it back alive without a scratch. Sparky smirks, saying Hojun is kind of embarrassing right now, but Hojun insists that a real man owns up to his mistakes. With that, he says it's time to leave this cursed place. Still, Hojun can't wrap his head around what caused him to lose consciousness, already dreading a sleepless night trying to figure it out. Meanwhile, Minjun's still stuck on the fact that he got a major compliment during his last week of training. Just as he turns to head out, a sudden system window pops up in front of his face with a message that the error has been resolved. Minjun stares at the screen, completely dumbfounded, muttering how he has no idea what this even means. He curses under his breath, calling this thing a piece of junk just like the one back in Isgard. But then the screen updates, officially labeling him as the cult founder of Lumi Nuna is his favorite character, followed by his stats. Strength, agility, and stamina all sit at 60 and demonic energy at 10. His only listed skill is corruption, ranked at E. The numbers don't bother him much, but something about this whole setup feels incredibly off, especially the part of Lumi Nuna in his status window. Lumi is a character from Dungeon Power Fighter, the same game he plays to kill time. Back in Isgard, when he had reached the peak of his dark magic powers and got sick of crazy fanatics trailing him everywhere, he created this joke cult around Lumi just to shake them off. Now somehow the jokes followed him here. Everyone had once begged Manold to take over the world, but to shake them off, he ended up forming Lumi Nuna's fan club. The plan backfired spectacularly. It only created more lunatics worshipping him. Now that he's looking at his current stats, Minjun realizes just how much weaker he's become. When he first came back without any demonic energy, he figured there'd be a penalty for dimensional travel. Still, out of the endless list of skills he used to have, only one remains, and that's corruption with a super low rank. At this point, he's convinced the skill's effect might as well be a stomachache. This isn't some third-rate novel, but the absurdity of it all makes him want to throw up. There's no way he can achieve any of his goals like this. But then again, He once climbed to the top of the dark magic hierarchy in Isgard. If he did it before, he can do it again. This time, he's got a solid reason too. He needs to regain his power fast so he can help the game company that's stuck in development hell thanks to monsters. But one thing is for sure, this isn't like the time in Isgard when he had no choice but to endure. Now, he's got the game company waiting on him. That day, the entire training center was thrown into chaos when news broke that a training dungeon had sealed itself while a session was in progress. On top of that, the lieutenant hadn't issued any clear orders, and a mere recruit had taken down a newly discovered species of monster, while the instructors were caught off guard by a string of unexpected events. The recruits, who were supposed to receive their private ranks and enjoy a bit of freedom until dispatch, suddenly found themselves at the center of a storm. The juniors feel like they're cursed, with no idea when their standby status will end, and all this during the last week of training. At this point, they wouldn't even mind just sitting around and watching TV. Lee Ho-chan turns to Park Jung-won and asks if Min-jun really took down that huge hound all by himself. Jung-won's still hyped, saying he first thought it was a cow because of how big it was, but yeah, Min-jun wrecked it. Then they start wondering if Kim Min-jun might reach the rank of sergeant within 2 years, but someone points out that the Hunter Corps' advanced exams are no joke. Most guys apparently get discharged as corporals even after serving the full 5 years. Heck, there are even some who leave at the rank of private first class. Afterward, Kim Min-jun salutes as he meets Commander Choi and notices Lieutenant Lee Myongch standing in an awkward position. Choi casually asks Lee to step out, and as soon as he leaves, Choi bursts out laughing, saying the lieutenant got punished for not properly inspecting the dungeons. But cutting to the chase, Choi says there's something important they need to talk about. Since Min-jun received the highest score, he's got a special proposal lined up, and asks if he's interested in hearing it. A crane in the flock of chickens is an idiom used to describe someone who stands out above the rest. Commander Choi firmly believes that Kim Min-jun is anything but ordinary, and he's honestly grateful to have witnessed someone like him in his lifetime. He never imagined he'd come across a crane so exceptional that it makes even the above average look like chickens in comparison. Choi says it would be a national loss to assign this kind of talent to the regular ranks, when they're in desperate need of skilled personnel. He also mentions hearing that Min-jun wants to advance quickly. Normally there's a rule that prevents privates from taking the promotional exam for at least a year, but when it comes to exceptions, that's a whole different story, and that part leaves Min-jun a little stunned. That's when Commander Choi drops the bomb. He's got the authority, as the training commander, to grant Min-jun that exception on one condition. He wants him to volunteer for the Hunter Corps stationed in Cheorwan, Gangwon-do. The old man even slams the table, shouting that Min-jun wouldn't need to wait a whole year for a promotion if he heads there. An awkward silence settles between them. Choi starts wondering if Cheorwan might be pushing it, even for someone desperate to advance. Maybe this exception isn't enough of a carrot. Meanwhile, Min-jun doesn't show a flicker of concern or interest. He's deep in thought. He recalls that Cheorwan is home to the 104th Division of the Invincible Hunter Squad, the same place his comrades warned him to avoid like the plague. The weather's brutal, snow piles up endlessly, and dungeons, along with monsters, pop up whenever they feel like it. It's labeled as one of the most extreme posts, but Min-jun couldn't care less where he ends up, as long as he advances fast. That promotion exception is a golden opportunity. Besides, the place reeks of dungeons, which is actually perfect. For his plan to succeed, he needs to climb the ranks as quickly as possible. The higher the rank, the broader his range of action. Also, there's no better way to earn a promotion than by proving oneself inside the dungeons. With that, Kim Min-jun gives a flat, unwavering yes, he's in. Commander Choi is shocked to his core that this guy just agreed to head straight into Cheorwan, the land of brutal cold, and did it with that kind of bold spirit. Afterward, in the parking lot, a bunch of people are gathered near the vans. Commander Choi is bawling like a baby while seeing off Kim Min-jun, begging him to get in touch as soon as he reaches his base. Min-jun figures this old man's being dramatic, thinking he'll be the one ghosting him. Choi swears he won't, but Min-jun clearly doesn't care. Still, the commander asks if he's seriously going to Cheorwan, wanting to know why he picked the one place everyone avoids. Min-jun says it's too big of a plan for the old man to wrap his head around, adding that he's got an insane goal to reach. Choi jokes if it's hitting max level 100 times, but Min-jun casually tells him he just hit his 13th max level yesterday, so 100 isn't even a challenge. Choi straight up thinks this kid is nuts, and then Min-jun's ride pulls away. On the road, Min-jun watches the loudest guy head off to his own base and starts wondering why he's suddenly riding solo. Out of the blue, an army jeep rolls up, calling for Kim Min-jun, throwing him completely off guard. Behind the wheel is a guy in black shades, Kim Min-ji, casually asking if the kid's been waiting long, saying the snow slowed him down. Min-jun's stunned, not even realizing it had started snowing. Min-ji tells him to hop in the back so they can head to the squad. The lad thinks this gorilla of a guy really loves showing off. As he loads himself into the back, reality hits that he's officially about to start his life as a soldier. But one thing nags at him, which is hazing. He remembers all those TV shows where the top dog forces the newcomer to do insane stuff like finding Dragon Balls or running pointless errands. Minjun knows he doesn't have the patience to deal with that kind of crap, but figures he'll need to tough it out somehow. On the way there, Minjun realizes just how dangerous things could get if he loses his cool and punches a superior. That would be the end of his goals, and he'd be shipped off to military prison as a regular soldier. As they approach their destination, snow starts falling lightly on the van of the Invincible Hunter Corps. Arriving at Gangwon-do, Cheorwon, at the Hunter Corps 104th Division's 2nd Battalion, Minji and Minjun step inside. Minji swings open a door and shoves the newbie inside, ordering the guys there to feed him and teach him how things work. The soldiers inside are stunned since they got zero heads up. But when they see the newcomer, they burst into laughter and cheer, thrilled to have fresh meat around. As Minjun introduces himself, the squad realizes this is the very guy from the rumors, the psycho who soloed the giant hound. One dude chucks Minjun's bag at Baldy, making him responsible for unpacking his stuff. Minjun quickly takes the two loud idiots as the alphas of the dorm, standing there with big goofy grins. It's like they just discovered a new toy or something, and they're dying to know why he chose this place when his top scores could have easily landed him a rear-line post. Minjun simply thinks the front lines offer better real experience and the fastest path to advancement. The guys stare at him like he's nuts, calling him crazy. They ask if he has a sister or a girlfriend, but Minjun says he's been alone since birth. Curious to see what he's capable of, they pester him to show his talent, and Minjun figures if showing off shuts them up, it's worth it. He drops down to do one-finger push-ups, but this annoys one of the alphas, who brags that they could do that all day. The other tells Sergeant Cho to relax and let the kids show off. Then Minjun switches it up and starts doing vertical push-ups on his fingers, which leaves the room stunned. No one thought they'd ever see something that wild in real life, and they start wondering if anyone in their platoon can pull it off. That's when they remember there's a certain sergeant who can. Suddenly, a fierce-looking soldier walks in and tells Sparky to get the hell out of his way. The alphas go pale and point toward Minjun, revealing he's the one doing the vertical push-ups. That voice hits Minjun like a shockwave, and he instantly recognizes it. It's Lee Sung-ho. Sergeant Lee Sung-ho has his jaw practically hitting the floor when he spots Kim Minjun standing there, of all places, here. Minjun's just as thrown off, never expecting to bump into this guy either. Right away, Sergeant Cho starts roasting Sung-ho out loud, asking why he's acting all worn out when he just got dispatched as an instructor. The other guy joins in, bringing up his so-called vacation for bullying rookies, asking how many days off he scored this time. Sung-ho doesn't even bother to respond, just throws them a lazy look and says he got 4 days. That only fuels the fire, and the two start whining about how he ruined their runtime. Cho flips him off for it, calling him a big party pooper. Meanwhile, Minjun's in the back, completely lost on what's even happening, watching this chaos unfold. Seung-ho, clearly done with them, lies down like he's clocked out for the day and starts watching a live stream of a volcanic dungeon. The feed shows scorching terrain with naturally high temperatures that deal non-stop damage. It's clear to Minjun now that there's a massive difference in rank and experience between them. Out of nowhere, Sung-ho calls out Private First Class Lee Dongjin and tells him to properly instruct his direct junior, who turns out to be none other than Minjun. Dongjin walks over, introduces himself with a friendly vibe, and suggests they talk more over food since he has a special pass to the post-exchange retail store. Minjun's low-key shocked, didn't even realize they weren't allowed to go there on their own. As soon as they arrive, Dongjin tells Minjun to go ahead and grab whatever he wants inside. Sparky admits he eats a lot, but Dongjin just waves it off and tells him to pick whatever it takes to fill him up. Minjun thinks this guy's actually pretty nice, but the moment Dongjin goes to pay and sees the bill hit 3,001, the man starts sweating bullets like he's just seen his bank account cry. Even the cashier jokes, asking if he's getting cold feet. While Minjun digs into his feast, he brings up the whole retail store situation, asking why they need special passes in the first place. That's when Dongjin explains that privates and private first-class soldiers can only use the store on weekends. He also needs to be at least a private first class to hit the gym and a corporal to use the PC rooms. Minjun nearly choked on his Doritos when he found out they've got PC rooms here. Still, Dongjin adds that it's just how it is, and he can't expect them to let a low-ranking private chill in a PC room, so better get used to it. Minjun gets all fired up about changing that system, but Dongjin tells him flat out that to even think about that, he needs to reach corporal. Then he adds his own take, saying in his opinion, a guy should be at least a sergeant before even trying for corporal. And honestly, that path's no joke. Minjun figures out real quick that he can't just bend the rules here to suit himself. He's pretty bummed about the whole PC room restriction, and it gets him wondering if there's any shortcut to ranking up. Dongjin, speaking from his own rough experience, admits he's failed the advancement exams so many times that he's been stuck as a private first class for the last 3 years. He calls himself pathetic, but Minjun tells him he'll make it next time. Truth is, Minjun actually likes Dongjin's vibe and wants him to rise through the ranks with him so they can hit the PC room together. Right then, a big guy walks in, Sergeant Kim Kwang-shik, who spots the two of them eating and eyes the snacks. He casually asks if they're having something good. Dongjin invites him to join, and of course the guy doesn't pass up free food. He plops down with them, grabs a handful of chips, cracks open a soda, and between bites, reassures them that he won't breathe a word about their little chat to anyone. However, Kwang-shik warns them that if they're useless during firearms training tomorrow, they might as well be dead. He makes it clear he has no intention of letting Minjun coast through anything, and bluntly asks if the kid even knows how to shoot. Dongjin jumps in, saying he was just about to explain how firearms training here is way different from anywhere else, but Kwang-shik isn't having it. He raises an eyebrow and asks if Dongjin's implying he's being overly involved when the guy's supposedly doing fine. Then Kwang-shik goes in hard, roasting him. If he's so good, then why is he still stuck as a private first class? That jab gets on Minjun's nerves, so he quietly releases a bit of his demonic energy, just enough to mess with the guy. Kwang-shik suddenly stands up, looking like something hit his stomach wrong, and starts accusing the snacks of being off. Minjun tries not to laugh, watching the guy fumble with the chip bag, probably hunting for the expiration date. Kwang-shik, now clearly regretting his snack choices, waves them off and tells the two to get moving. At that moment, Sparkly Minjun realizes that hey, maybe the corruption skill has more day-to-day use than he thought. Meanwhile, Kwang-shik's still clueless, thinking his stomach just gave up on him out of nowhere. Next, Minjun pulls Dongjin's attention and asks him to break down the details of firearms training. Nice guy, always ready to help, asks if Minjun has ever used the KX-2 with ICM bullets before. He explains that here, they use bullets even more powerful than ICMs. Those are just like ponies in comparison. The ones the Hunter Corps uses are on a whole different level, more like wild stallions, with a recoil and sound that hit like a cannon. Because of how often monsters show up, firepower is everything in this unit. Dongjin warns that at first it might feel strange and even painful, and yeah, he's going to get yelled at during training, but he assures Minjun that he'll get used to it in no time. The lad nods, kind of liking the whole pony to stallion metaphor. It fits perfectly. Though he remembers seeing long-range weapons in Isgard that were on the level of an elephant, the thought of a wild stallion still gets him hyped. That elephant weapon couldn't even be called a firearm, it was practically a siege weapon. So now, with the stallion comparison in mind, Minjun's all fired up for tomorrow's training. Meanwhile, Dongjin quietly wonders what's up with Sergeant Kwang-shik and whether his stomach has recovered. The next day at the firearms training facility, loud bangs echo non-stop as soldiers aim at moving hound targets. When it's Minjun's turn, he misses once but still lands 19 clean shots. The announcer straight up loses it, calling him out like he's a machine. Everyone stares in disbelief, watching this private put on a clinic with his aim. They start whispering that he's some kind of shooting monster. Even Sergeant Cho, who boasts his personal best of 14 hits, a score that's already considered excellent in the squad, is stunned by what he just saw. Meanwhile, two other big names are watching from the sidelines. 2nd Battalion's 2nd Platoon Commander, 2nd Lieutenant Kim Min-cheol, is frozen in shock seeing this kid rack up 19 hits. And next to him, 1st Sergeant Heo Taesok, the battalion's administration and supply officer, nods slowly, realizing the rumors about this elite private weren't just hype, they were deadly accurate. Now the Alpha of Dorms demands to know how Minjun pulled it off, but the guy just shrugs and says he followed the instructions. That nonchalant answer only ticks them off more. Out of nowhere, Kim Minji steps in, praising Minjun and telling him to keep showing his best. Minji even mentions he's looking forward to seeing Minjun's performance this afternoon in the special firearms training. Sergeant Cho can't handle it, fuming at the idea of this newbie even trying the special training, while his buddy throws shade at Minji, accusing him of favoritism. The other guys start whispering that Minjun's so good, he probably would have landed another vacation if he had hit all 20. Meanwhile, the heavy shooter of the group turns to Dongjin, demanding to know what's so special about this elite training. Dongjin is still reeling from how this so-called newbie turned out to be a straight-up first-class marksman. He explains that rookies usually aren't allowed in that training, since it uses improved conventional munitions bullets, basically the big guns. Nice guy assures them he'll explain it more later, and that Minjun will get a proper briefing anyway. The program runs with 2-person teams entering a facility filled with monsters they have to eliminate on the way to the endpoint. While the monsters aren't high-level threats, the catch is that they're fast-moving targets, and they'll fight back. On top of that, civilian plates pop up unexpectedly, and hitting even one of those counts as a massive failure. Dongjin adds that the whole thing is monitored and controlled by the executives, so there's no real danger, but it does simulate an actual combat scenario. The mention of real monster targets makes Minjun's heart race. This is exactly the kind of action he signed up for. At the mess hall, the feast kicks off, and all the soldiers dive in like they haven't eaten in days. While digging into his plate, Minjun compliments Dongjin for landing 13 shots in a row, but Dongjin's still in disbelief over the newbie nailing 19. Nice guy turns a bit red, brushing it off by saying he's not that great, just had some experience. He then points out that Sergeant Lee Seung-ho is the real monster around here, consistently hitting 17 shots on average, making him the top shooter in the squad. That little detail hits Minjun. If the numbers are right, then he's now officially the #1 shooter in the unit. Dongjin has no doubt in his mind that Minjun's going to crush it in the special firearms training too. Curious about the upcoming 2-person team setup, Minjun asks if Dongjin's going to be his partner. But Dongjin explains that the teams are picked by the executives, so there's no telling who'll be paired up with whom. When asked, the criteria for assigning team members are handled through a thorough ladder lottery. At the special firearms shooting range, the squad is given 5 minutes to gear up before training kicks off. Out of nowhere, Guangxik bellows that he's been paired up with the newbie, claiming it's going to be a massive mismatch because a sergeant and a private are worlds apart. Minjun sees this loudmouth as his partner now, and by the looks of it, the guy hasn't learned a thing, still stuck in hazing mode. This loafer smugly tells Minjun that the average finish time in their squad is 3 minutes. Then this creeper throws in a warning, saying if Minjun doesn't finish under that time, he'll regret it. Minjun doesn't say a word, which makes Guangxik assume the rookie's confidence is shot. He even mocks him, calling the 19 hits from earlier just dumb luck. Minjun pegs him as a lost cause but still calmly says he'll do his best. Guangxik doesn't let up, saying if the newbie finishes slower than him, he's dead meat. After that, he tells Minjun to keep an eye on the team ahead of them and learn how the whole thing works. Kim Minji locks in the first round of shooters. That includes Lane 1's Sergeant Kim Moongi and Lane 2's Sergeant Jong Han-young. Both are ready to roll, stepping into their individual elevators and descending into the underground facility, officially starting the training. The setup is supposed to be tactical monster elimination while protecting civilian plates inside an enclosed area. But let's be real, it's basically turned into a competition between troops. The main goal is to get through the course as fast as possible and slam that red button before the other guy does. The monster icons vary in size based on how dangerous the creature is. The nastier the monster, the bigger the icon. Guangxik casually tells Minjun this should give him a pretty solid idea of what he's stepping into. Each lane has 2 monsters, and since the encounters are totally random, no one knows what they're up against until they're face to face. Inside, a massive rake toad lunges at Moongi, trying to swallow him whole. Minjun notices Moongi had a faster start on lane 1, but with that kind of monster in his path, the poor guy might lose his lead. Meanwhile, on lane 2, Han-young starts off by taking down a monster rat, thinking it's going to be a smooth run. But right as he speeds up, a giant worm slithers in and blocks him off completely. Moongi, on the other hand, is losing it in full rage mode and straight up butchers both rake toads like a beast. The dude figures the other guy must have already wrapped things up since those rake toads caused enough chaos, but turns out it's the other way around. Moongi bolts to the red button and slams it, declaring his win with a time of 2 minutes and 24 seconds. Everyone around erupts in cheers, while they start talking about Han-young's awful luck for pulling a desert worm. Moongi doesn't waste a second before teasing Han-young, saying that at that pace, he's better off not defending the nation at all. He also reminds him it's his treat at the store now. Han-young grits his teeth and mutters that Moongi just got lucky. But Moongi saw everything and points out that Han-young even shot a civilian plate, so he would have been disqualified anyway. While those two keep bickering, Guangxik notices the bet they had going on, which sparks an idea in Minjun's head. He suggests making a bet too, where the loser has to grant the winner's wish like a real man. Guangxik laughs in his face, thinking this newbie got cocky just because the seniors have been a little soft on him. Still, the big gorilla agrees but says he's got no real wish that a private like Minjun could actually grant. Instead, he jokes he'd rather just get his salary for the next 3 months. Minjun pegs him for a simple money-hungry guy, but locks in the bet anyway. Dongjin, on the side, is getting more nervous by the second. Kim Minji calls the next group in, and Minjun steps up to face off against Guangxik as they descend into the facility. Minjun's already kicking himself for falling for that cheap provocation, knowing it's usually best not to draw attention. Still, he just can't sit still when someone pokes at him. Outside, the crowd is buzzing, hyped to see a sergeant actually make a bet with a private during training. Some even joke about whether Guangxik will have to jump in and save the newbie from a monster. Then out of nowhere, a sudden tremor hits, rattling everyone to their core. Heads whip around, but nobody has a clue what's going on. Back underground, Minjun freezes for a second, confused by the shaking. His eyes widen when he catches sight of a monstrous one-eyed freak chomping down on a rat like it's popcorn, and the sight instantly gives him the ick. The Cyclops casually tosses the half-eaten rat aside like trash and turns its hungry gaze toward its next meal, Minjun. The guy lets out an internal sigh, thinking this is such a drag. He remembers his dinner plans were fried chicken tonight, which means he better wrap this mess up fast. Still, he hesitates for a second, thinking it would suck to accidentally shoot the wrong target and hit a civilian plate if he got careless. Just as the monster charges in to start something, Minjun wonders why this cranky monster is going berserk like that. The fight kicks off for real, and Minjun shifts into serious mode, pouring his demonic energy into every attack. One solid punch to the gut stuns the monster enough to calm it for a moment, and Minjun figures all that's left is to finish the job with a shot. But then, right before his eyes, he sees something wild. The monster's torn-up hand regenerates in seconds. Meanwhile, the others nearby are losing it, asking if the newbie's actually out there fighting something. They're trying to figure out if there was an accident. Kim Minji's brain is on the verge of meltdown as he realizes exactly what's going on. The newbie is battling a Cyclops that managed to break free from the second lane. Not just any Cyclops either. That thing is the devouring demon. After absorbing energy, the Cyclops' regeneration and attack power ramp up insanely fast until the digestion phase ends. But something feels totally off. This kind of monster usually won't lash out unless it's backed into a corner. What's weirder is how it went berserk after eating another monster. The whole thing makes zero sense. This meathead shouldn't be losing it like this. Meanwhile, Minjun is deep in the brawl, trading blows with the beast like it's just another Tuesday. The dude knows full well this should have just been standard firearms training, not a live boss battle. Still, he doesn't hold back. He unloads a barrage of bullets right into the monster's skull, relentless with his aim. A few well-placed shots tear through its eye, and Minjun notices something. The eye regenerates way slower than the rest. That's his opening. He keeps moving like a ghost, dodging every swing with sharp reflexes. But even blind, the Cyclops' attack speed doesn't drop. That's the real freaky part. Minjun's dodging like a pro, but the monster still tracks him, not by sight. He starts thinking maybe it's picking up on sound or scent, or worse, maybe it's reacting to his demonic energy. That could be the trigger. Back on the sidelines, Kim Minji, fully loaded and suited up, watches the chaos unfold with a growing sense of guilt. He can't figure out how things escalated like this, but he blames himself for the screw-up. No regular private should be facing off against an energy-fueled Cyclops. Even armed, that's a suicide mission. Deep down, all Minji can do is hope Minjun survives long enough. Praying that the rookie can just hang in there, Minji takes off, rushing in with everything he's got to back him up. Meanwhile, Corporal Kim Gwangshik is sprinting toward the button, confident he'd clock in at 2 minutes and 30 seconds. He is full of himself, thinking Minjun could never keep up with his speed and had probably already failed, just like he expected. He even joked to himself about spending the brat's salary during vacation. This prick is having a laugh here. But when Corporal Kim Gwangshik arrives at the destination, his face goes really pale to see the brat casually standing beside the button. Minjun gives a look to Sergeant Gwangshik and laughs at his face with a mug, calmly pressing the red button. That stunt took the light out of Gwangshik's face, who is sweating like crazy to lose a bet from a brat. Minji has no words when he finally arrives at the scene. The Cyclops is dead, and he can't figure out how Minjun possibly managed to shoot to make it end like this. Back there, everyone's going bonkers to hear that the so-called newbie finished in less than 2 minutes. They can't believe Minjun just took down a fully fed Cyclops all by himself, especially since everyone thought it had to be some kind of fluke. Dongjin eyes him with concern, asking if he's hurt or feeling off in any way, but Minjun answers calmly, saying he's totally fine. With that, Dongjin's tension eases a bit, and he asks Minjun how he managed to take down the Cyclops. Minjun flashes a grin and says it's all thanks to his training. Meanwhile, Corporal Kim Gwangshik watches the whole scene unfold with burning frustration. One of the guys suddenly brings up the bet they had made, pointing out that the newbie actually won. Gwangshik smacks the guy from behind and snaps, asking if he's got a death wish. He yells that the situation wasn't fair, so the bet doesn't count. There's no way the rookie could have finished faster than him. Gwangshik insists that during special firearms training, each soldier is supposed to defeat 2 monsters before reaching the endpoint, and he did just that. According to him, the newbie only defeated 1, so the win doesn't count. Gwangshik keeps going on about how unfair it all is, claiming that if he had only faced 1 monster like Minjun, he would have finished way faster. He starts yelling at Dongjin, demanding to know if this isn't obviously biased. He pushes harder, even going as far as threatening him to speak up. Dongjin pauses, clearly annoyed, while Minjun watches the whole mess unfold. To him, Gwangshik seems like the absolute worst to Minjun. Sure, the whole situation was unpredictable, and even though Minjun took the monster down with his bare hands, he hadn't been planning to hold on to the win or rub it in anyone's face. He was ready to let the bet slide, but seeing how Gwangshik's acting now, he's stunned and completely disgusted. The lad had plans to even forget about the bet too, but he couldn't understand why this punk was taking it out on the private first-class Dongjin instead of him. As the tension builds, Sergeant Lee Sungho steps in and shuts it all down. He tells Corporal Gwangshik to be ashamed of himself, pointing out that the newbie took the biggest risk of anyone there. Sungho explains that Cyclops monsters are usually passive, but once they go berserk, they're on a whole different level of danger. He makes it clear that everyone saw Minjun deal with something way more intense than what Gwangshik faced. Then, he calls him out for rubbing it in when everyone knows the truth. That catches the whole crowd off guard. No one expected Sungho to step into this mess. Gwangshik fires back, asking if Sungho's just trying to show off in front of his juniors, but Sungho shuts him down again, saying Guangxik's the one looking desperate right now. Guangxik tries to brush it off, telling Sungho to stop embarrassing him in front of the juniors and saying he was only joking. But Sergeant Sungho shoots back, asking if everything that doesn't go Guangxik's way is always just a joke. He adds with a smug look that it's funny how getting a higher rank suddenly makes all the stubborn mules who used to boss you around start acting really obedient. That line hits hard. Guangxik looks visibly ashamed, unable to come up with a comeback, which satisfies Minjun for sure. While Corporal Kim Guangxik stands there in shame, Sergeant Sungho asks if he's got anything else to say. Like a nervous wreck, Guangxik mumbles that it's nothing. Sungho just nods, saying it's better that way. Later, during their evening stroll, Kim Minjun and Dongjin talk about how Sergeant Lee Seungho had once received a rare 2-rank promotion, a special case awarded to someone who scored the highest in the advancement exams. It used to be a legitimate path, but the system was scrapped after a staff sergeant, who'd received the same kind of fast-track promotion, caused a major accident in a dungeon. Sergeant Sungho ended up being one of the last people ever granted that kind of jump. Minjun asks if there's really no way to get a special advancement anymore, and Dongjin replies that while there are still exceptions, like rescuing a civilian during an emergency or pulling off something remarkable during a monster hunt, those situations are extremely subjective. He explains it's better to assume the rule doesn't actually exist, since barely any hunters have advanced through it. Minjun takes that as a hint that, in the end, the commander probably has the final say. The guy's clearly desperate for advancement, though it's not like he's wishing for civilians to end up in danger. Still, what puzzles him more is how strangely quiet this place is, considering it's supposed to be overrun with monsters wreaking havoc every day, the kind that wiped out the entire North Korean army. Minjun keeps thinking that 2 days is more than enough. He's already itching to advance even as a private. Dongjin tells him he's doing great and will be promoted soon, then asks if he's even paying attention. Right then, Minjun wishes a gate would just appear out of nowhere. A sudden announcement blares from the command and control center's speaker system. It's an emergency alert that a swarm of middle bats is creeping at the oil reserve, and all available hunters are ordered to respond immediately and install the protective shield without delay. The announcement keeps repeating, grabbing both Dongjin and Minjun's attention. Minjun's eyes light up in excitement as Dongjin tells him to hurry up. Middle bats are bat-type monsters about the size of children, known to live in colonies. While they're not especially threatening one-on-one, they're fast as hell and have the ability to spit fireballs. That makes them especially dangerous around something like an oil reserve. If not handled fast, the whole military base could go up in flames. Meanwhile, 2 hunters already stationed at the reserve are locked and loaded, scanning the skies and counting the bats, wondering how the hell these things managed to show up here of all places. One of the hunters warns the other not to fire anywhere near the oil reserve, asking what they'd do if the bats went wild and triggered an explosion. The other argues they can't just stand by and do nothing, but his partner insists they should wait and monitor the situation for now. The report's already been sent in, and someone's bound to show up soon to install the protective shield. Still, both of them are visibly on edge, uneasy about the risk. Just imagining what could happen if those bats spit fireballs before the shield goes up is enough to make their blood run cold. They keep debating what to do, still confused about why the bats showed up at the oil reserve in the first place. Just then, Minjun appears and casually announces that he'll draw the bats' attention. Both hunters freeze in shock, knowing that he's a newbie from the second company, and they have no clue what he's planning to do without any equipment. But Minjun brushes them off, saying he doesn't have time for gear when his precious guests, the monsters that are going to help him advance, are already here. He's fully ready to earn the title of the private who single-handedly stops an emergency that could have taken out the entire military camp. And best of all, he gets to hog every last bit of experience for himself. As expected, this cocky brat realizes the bats are reacting to his demonic energy, and now, they're all his. On the other hand, the hunters nearby are scrambling to set up the equipment and make sure nothing gets damaged. But as soon as they catch sight of Minjun out in the open, they stop in shock. Sergeant Seungho sees them spacing out and yells at them to get moving and finish installing the shield. The hunters stammer, pointing at Minjun who's already out there fighting. That only makes Seungho angrier. He snaps that Minjun is doing all the heavy lifting while they're just standing there gawking. The hunters quickly apologize and jump back into action. Minjun thinks it's taking way too long since he has to rip the bats apart one by one. Sergeant Seungho comes running over, shouting at him to lower his stance and fall back, demanding to know what he's doing out there without even a bulletproof vest. But Minjun isn't backing down. He's convinced this fight is all his, and he's not about to hand it over. Then his eyes land on the electric fly swatter in Seungho's hand, and he lights up with excitement. Right then, Seungho suddenly drops to his knees, clutching his stomach as it acts up. Minjun asks if he's okay, and the sergeant barely manages a reply that he is. Minjun takes that moment to ask for the electric fly swatter, but Seungho refuses, telling him again to fall back. Minjun just grins and tells him not to worry, promising he'll be back in a jiffy after taking care of the bats. The moment he grabs the swatter, his face lights up like a kid on Christmas morning, and he dives straight back into the fight. Sung-ho watches in disbelief as Min-jun begins overpowering the middle bats with ease, swinging the swatter like it's a legendary weapon. Suddenly, one of the bats spits out a fireball and everyone nearby freezes in fear. Without hesitation, Sergeant Sung-ho commands everyone to open fire, saying he'll take full responsibility for whatever happens. But Min-jun stares the bat down and roasts it, saying, if the bat has no idea what happens when it plays with fire, then it's about to get burned. Everyone is stunned by how high Min-jun just jumped, wondering how on earth he managed something like that. A few hunters announce that the protective shield has been activated and remind everyone to secure all the cables. They're still asking how much longer it'll take to gather all the middle bat corpses. Sergeant Seung-ho salutes his superior, who responds with a nod, saying they've done a good job. He then asks if they've figured out where the bats came from, especially since none of them showed up on the radar. The commander looks around and asks who managed to roast the bats so thoroughly and how many there were. Sung-ho answers that there were 30 in total, and admits he is also wondering where the commander had been during the chaos. The operations officer on duty, Captain Song Jun-shik, explains that the battalion commander is supposed to be arriving shortly. Even though the guy doesn't specialize in combat, it's still not okay for an awakened executive to be completely absent during a full-blown emergency and only appear once everything is wrapped up. Sung-ho figures he was probably just lounging in the control center, watching the monster radar the entire time. Jun-shik asks Sergeant Sung-ho if he's the one who roasted all the bats and says he'll report it to the battalion commander. Sung-ho quickly replies that it wasn't him. When Jun-shik follows up, asking if there's anyone else in the battalion skilled enough to pull that off with an electric baton, Sung-ho explains that it wasn't just about the ones taken down with the baton. Every single one of the 30 bats was defeated by the same person. He tells Jun-shik to make sure that's what gets reported. Jun-shik is stunned, asking again for clarification, since all the other executives were off duty. If it wasn't Sung-ho, then who could it possibly be? Just then, Min-jun strolls over, salutes Seung-ho, and casually hands back the electric baton he had borrowed. He then asks with a grin if that thing happens to be expensive. The next day in the battalion commander's office, Sergeant Sung-ho is questioning Min-jun, asking if he's someone who has re-enlisted. Min-jun shakes his head and says no. Then Sung-ho asks if he's a regressor or something, and again, Min-jun denies it. Sung-ho sighs and tells him not to pull any reckless stunts like he did yesterday ever again. He warns that while he might have gotten lucky this time, a hunter can never predict what might happen next. Min-jun, thinking to himself that it wasn't luck at all, decides it's best to keep his mouth shut. Seung-ho explains that, as he probably knows, the Hunter Corps is a special unit, and everything about it is different, starting with the size of the divisions, which only consist of 4 battalions. Even those battalions have way fewer troops than regular military units. Min-jun thinks to himself that obviously that's the case, since not all awakened keep re-enlisting, but he still doesn't understand why Sung-ho is bringing it up. That's when Sung-ho asks if he knows how all of this is possible. Min-jun stares back, completely clueless. Sergeant Sung-ho says that every single person in the Hunter Corps is awakened. While not everyone is out there fighting, quite a few officers specialize in areas like administration, monster theory, tactics, and weapons research, but they're all awakened too. The dude explains that in the Hunter Corps, advancement is based purely on accomplishments and talent. Meanwhile, Min-jun is thinking that they called him into the battalion commander's office first thing in the morning, so he figured there'd be some good news. But now he just feels annoyed. It's more like an info session, and he should have known better than to get his hopes up. Sung-ho looks at him and asks if he was expecting something just because he got called in. Then he tells the lad to stay focused, adding that today, the hunter who has defeated the most monsters in the 104th Division will be visiting their battalion. A car full of tough-looking men pulls up at the Hunter Corps base, and Colonel Lee Junbyom, the 2nd Battalion commander, steps forward to salute the arriving guests. Standing beside him are Captain Seo Jung-woon, the 2nd Battalion's 2nd commander, Captain Song Jun-shik, the operations officer, 2nd Lieutenant Kim Cholman, the 2nd platoon commander, and Sergeant Lee Sung-ho, the 2nd squad leader. All of them stand tall, sharp, and fully focused. Serdoo walks up and shakes hands with Sergeant Sung-ho, saying he's heard about how calmly he handled yesterday's incident. He praises Seung-ho's work, and Seung-ho respectfully thanks him for the acknowledgement. Meanwhile, Kim Min-jun is sizing up Serdoo, thinking he definitely gives off a commanding presence. And now he's really curious just how strong a 2-star officer from the Hunter Corps must be. Serdoo then turns his attention to Min-jun and asks if he's the one. Min-jun confirms, and as Serdoo shakes his hand, Min-jun instantly feels the insane strength in his grip, leaving him stunned. Then the big guy casually starts patting Min-jun's back like he's his favorite puppy, telling everyone to relax and ease up. Serdoo tells everyone to stand at ease and asks if they've pinpointed the location of the gate the middle bats came from. Sergeant Sung-ho reports that it's on a hill about 1.2 kilometers north of the battalion. The dude explains that the area is currently off limits and they're working on identifying the gate's rank. Sir-do instructs him to report directly to the division commander's office once they have confirmation. Next, this guy asks if there was an issue with the radar. Captain Junshik responds that the alarm didn't trigger until the bats were practically on top of the battalion. He adds that it doesn't look like a mechanical failure, but they're checking for possible blind spots. Sir-do says that if it isn't a malfunction, then the problem might have been the sheer number of monsters slipping through, and orders them to inform the Divisional Ordnance Office and install 2 additional radars. The officer gives a sharp yes, while the atmosphere stays tensed up and quiet. From there on, Sir-do turns to Min-jun, acknowledging his courage and fast reaction during the incident, but reminds him to be more careful next time, and at the very least, not to forget his equipment. Min-jun apologizes politely, though in his head, he's thinking that if he had brought gear with him, the entire battalion might have gone up in flames. But Sir-do tells him not to apologize, saying he's just joking, then asks if it's true that Min-jun took out 30 middle bats all on his own. Min-jun nods and confirms he did. Sir-do praises him, saying that if he hadn't acted so quickly, the oil reserve could have gone up in flames. Everyone standing there stays tense, unsure of what's coming next. Then Sir-do announces that Min-jun has a gift from the division commander, and congratulates him on his advancement. He explains that normally, there would be a lot of red tape to get through, but when a soldier achieves something outstanding, they deserve to be rewarded right away. Sparky thanks him sincerely. Sir-do then orders Sung-ho to immediately grant Min-jun a 3-day, 2-night vacation. Sung-ho agrees without hesitation. The brat lights up. He expected to advance eventually, but he never imagined it would happen this fast, and now a vacation too. Suddenly, military life doesn't seem so bad. As they walk together, Kim compliments Min-jun for doing a great job, and mentions that he hasn't even had a proper conversation with him since his recent transfer, yet Min-jun has already made such a big impact. He adds that thanks to Min-jun's actions, even he ended up receiving a commendation. Min-jun thanks him, and Kim asks if it's his first time going home since enlisting and what he plans to do outside. Min-jun lights up with excitement and says he's obviously going to play Dungeon Power Fighter at the PC room. He figures that even if he goes home, he'll just end up in a restricted area with no internet, so he might as well spend the next 3 days and 2 nights gaming instead of wasting time on travel. He arrives at the PC room where 2 guys nearby are deep in conversation. The big guy asks the cranky dude if he went there again, and the cranky guy groans, telling him not to even bring it up. He complains that the soldiers are so stingy. It's not like he was planning to go inside the cave. He just wanted to pick some pine mushrooms in the area. He says he already got permission from the mountain's owner and even deposited the money, so he doesn't get why they're stopping him. The big guy replies that Chang Xian went there before the area was completely restricted and came back saying the whole mountain reeked of something toxic. He adds that he had a headache for days afterward, so if this lad plans on heading back, he's definitely asking for trouble. The dimwit in the green cap says he'll just go there with a mask or something. Suddenly, Min-jun asks where that place is, which surprises both of them. They end up giving him a ride to Hwacheon, and Min-jun thanks them for it. They tell him they can't go any further, or the soldiers will stop them, and ask if he can handle whatever's going on up on that mountain. Min-jun tells them not to worry. The restriction will be lifted by tomorrow, so they'll be able to head back to the mountain soon. The guys tell him to be careful, and not to mention their names if anyone asks. Min-jun assures them he won't. As he walks, he thinks about how he ended up coming to Hwacheon instead of spending his vacation at a PC room. That's when he catches a familiar scent. It's demonic energy. Min-jun notices the security near the entrance to the mountain is pretty tight, but surprisingly loose closer to the dungeon itself. In that case, he figures it's better to avoid drawing attention to himself, especially since he's still just a private. The soldiers at the cave entrance suddenly get stomach aches from all the purple smoke Min-jun is leaking, which is enough to corrupt them. One of them says he'll try to hold it in, but quickly gives up, apologizing and admitting he just can't control it. He tells the other soldier that no one's going to show up here anyway, so they can take care of their business and be back in a few minutes. It'll be fine. The other guy agrees. Kim Min-jun sees the perfect opportunity and slips into the cave. The lad doesn't sense any monsters inside, but the demonic energy feels unusually dense. Still, he doesn't really care, so he rushes inside. His demonic energy stat begins to rise by 1 point, and he's shocked at how steadily it increases. The dude keeps crawling into this toxic place. Once it hits the threshold, his corruption skill automatically enhances, and he even unlocks a new skill called Nightwalker. Min-jun feels lucky, finally starting to resemble Luminuna, his favorite character and the cult founder he once modeled himself after. With 60 strength, 60 agility, 60 stamina, and 15 demonic energy, things are looking up. Now equipped with 2 skills, Corruption and Nightwalker, the lad's genuinely thrilled to gain free demonic energy and a practical ability. Nightwalker summons a familiar formed from shadow, something he relied on often back in Isgard. That sneaky little bastard is a specialist in assassinations, thriving in the dark and staying hidden. Sure, it constantly drains his demonic energy, but it's more than worth the cost. But when he activates it with a simple emerge, disappointment hits. The familiar looks pitiful, like it might fall apart if the sun so much as glances its way. Minjun wonders if it's the side effect of dimensional travel, or just his low demonic energy stat dragging things down. Still, after a moment, he reconsiders. The tiny, withered form isn't useless. In fact, its small size makes it perfect for slipping into shadows and staying unnoticed. It may not be flashy, but in stealth, it's already earning its keep. Kim Minjun salutes and says he's back from vacation. Everyone around stares in surprise, asking if he's really the hunter who advanced faster than anyone in history. Someone else chimes in, asking if it's true that the division commander personally gave him a vacation and handed him his badge. Minjun nods, confirming it all. Then this bunch starts praising him, clearly impressed. The kid just shrugs it off, then spots Dongjin and casually hands him a bottle of moisturizer, saying he brought it for him. Dongjin smiles and replies that he didn't need to go through the trouble, but thanks him. That's when Kim Guangshik strolls over, grinning, and cracks a joke about their touchy friendship, saying it's not like Minjun got deployed overseas or something. He asks if Minjun brought the Maxim he asked for, and Sparky tosses it to him without missing a beat. Minjun and Dongjin keep chatting, and Dongjin teases that he'll have to start using honorifics if Minjun makes it to corporal. Sparky shoots back with a confident grin, saying there's no if about it. Then Sergeant Cho, the red-haired loudmouth, says he happened to see the list of candidates for the advancement exam when he was passing by admin, and Minjun's name was on it. Sergeant Kim, the guy in the blue jacket, is shocked, pointing out that the application deadline passed before Minjun even transferred there. Cho raises an eyebrow, wondering if the division commander pulled strings to push it through, because there's no other explanation for the timing. Sergeant Kim says there's no way it's possible since it hasn't even been a year since Minjun enlisted, so technically, he shouldn't even qualify. The guys around start murmuring, surprised that the so-called newbie of the unit is about to take the advancement exams. They wonder if that's even allowed, but then someone points out that since Sparky's now a private first class, he's technically not the youngest anymore. Minjun casually tells them that the training commander gave him a special offer. That stuns the whole group. Sergeant Cho squints at him and asks if he seriously came all the way to the front lines just so he could start taking advancement exams a year early, calling him a complete madman. The red-haired loudmouth isn't joking either. Sergeant Kim adds that since Minjun's already promoted to private first class, his eyes are clearly set on corporal now. He shakes his head and says if the kid actually passes, then he's 100% crazy. The room bursts into laughter. Sergeant Kim goes on to mention that the candidates taking the advancement exams this Saturday have orientation and specialty weapons training starting tomorrow, so Sparky better be ready to suffer a bit. Sergeant Cho chuckles on his way out, telling kids to have fun. He and Sergeant Kim leave together, still chatting and laughing as they go. Sergeant Cho asks Sergeant Kim if he's not taking the advancement exam himself, and Kim just shrugs, saying there's no reason for him to stay in the army any longer. Meanwhile, Sparky is deep in thought, wondering about the specialty weapons training. He's curious if it involves anything beyond the standard firearms. At the Hunter Advancement Examination orientation, the officer at the front tells everyone to quiet down and pay attention. He says they're going to run through a quick orientation for the exam scheduled tomorrow. For those who've taken it before, he warns them not to tune out just because they know the drill. He wants everyone focused for the sake of the first-timers. The officer then explains that the Hunter Corps Advancement exam is made up of two main parts, a written test and a practical test. He reassures them that the written portion is basic, even easier than a driving test. Minjun tunes out that part immediately. His eyes are set on the practical section, which includes a stat test, specialty weapons proficiency, and monster handling ability. In his head, he already considers passing a done deal. But now he's thinking, if he gets perfect scores, there will be any perks or something. That thought alone gets him to straighten up. Maybe it's time to stop cruising and start taking this a bit more seriously. Coach announces that they're starting specialty weapons training. Everyone gathers and stands at attention on the field as he instructs the privates and private first classes to pick only swords. Then, he turns to the corporals and tells them to grab their personal weapons and head farther down the field for separate training, warning them that if he catches anyone slacking off, they're as good as dead. Furthermore, he explains that he'll be teaching the basics of swordsmanship according to the Hunter Corps Combat Manual, but he also makes it clear that just blindly following the manual won't do them much good. Instead, he encourages them to use the Corps' techniques as a foundation and build their own unique fighting style from there. Everyone shouts back, claiming they are on board. He stresses that the basics matter more than anything else, so they better keep their eyes on him and focus. Minjun immediately sees why this is called specialty weapons training, because going into battle with only rifles would be straight up dumb. As everyone starts swinging their swords, he quietly compares their moves with what he learned back in Isgard. Honestly, the swordsmanship there might be better, depending on how it's applied. Minjun starts practicing, and just like that, jaws start dropping. His movements are sharp, clean, and precise, so much so that the others can't believe their eyes. Coach tells everyone to stop and calls Kim Minjun up to the podium. Facing the group, he points out that most of their sword movements still look stiff and disconnected. He tells them to take notes from Private First Class Kim Minjun. The whole squad tightens up, eyes locked on him as Minjun steps forward and runs through the sword forms again, each swing cleaner and more precise than the last. Eventually, Minjun gets tired and drops into a seat, wondering why he's the one putting on a performance when he's not even the training officer. He wipes the sweat from his forehead, grumbling to himself about how hot it is, and questioning whether it's actually going to snow like the forecast promised. Surha walks over, praises him for nailing the routine, and casually hands him a sealed packet, telling him to eat it when he's alone. Minjun stares at it, confused, wondering what kind of guy just walks around with random stuff like that in his pocket. Right then, Dongjin approaches, complimenting Minjun's form and asking if he can take a closer look at it during the break. Minjun's caught a little off guard. He didn't expect that kind of request. Dongjin adds that he knows it's Minjun's first time officially training with them, and it's obvious the sword is his specialty weapon. But for him, fighting monsters with it has never felt natural. He politely asks again if he can study Minjun's movements for a while. Minjun replies that if Dongjin needs his help, he can take as many looks as he wants. As he watches Dongjin move through the sword forms, Minjun notices right away, this guy's been training seriously. His technique is solid, following the standard form of Hunter Corps swordsmanship to the letter. The issue isn't his movements, it's his confidence. And that, well, happens to be Minjun's specialty. He thinks to himself that it's not time yet, but when the moment comes, he's going to turn Dongjin into a top-tier hunter. It's Saturday, the day of the advancement examination. Around the area, things are still pretty chill. Two weirdos are busy watching some girl group's music video like it's the highlight of their week. A group of guys are into a heated basketball match, and off to the side, one guy's locked in, laser-focused on a game of Go. Then suddenly, the school speakers crackle to life with an announcement from the administration office. It calls for all hunters scheduled for the advancement exams to head straight to the military training ground. The message keeps looping, growing more urgent, and as it echoes through the area, everyone freezes. Eyes widen and hearts pick up pace. It's finally happening. They all know what this means. It's time to try and level up. It's time to become a corporal, and Minjun gives a smile that the time has come. On a bright sunny day, the hunters gathered at the training grounds, and soon after, 2nd Lieutenant Kim Cheolman of the 2nd Battalion stepped forward. He introduced himself as their guide for the day and added with a dry smile that he hoped they'd actually bother to listen to him. He, wasting no time, calls for a head count and told each company to report their numbers. Just then, a bus rolled up, and Kim Cheolman instructed everyone to board in an orderly manner. Once they were all on board, he reminded them of what they already knew. The advancement exams would be held at the 105th Division, which meant they'd be heading to Gapyeong, where the division was stationed. Before taking his seat, he added one last piece of advice. Review the practice questions while on the road. On the bus, it's pure chaos, packed wall to wall with confused weirdos and jittery hunters. Some of them were chatting about how the 4th Battalion would be joining the advancement exams today, and one guy immediately perked up, asking if that meant girls would be there. His whole mood lit up as he started going on about how he was finally going to show off his years of practice and weapons proficiency just to impress them. Both of them got all hyped and fired up about scoring phone numbers. One guy came fully loaded with cheesy tricks to impress girls, even though getting their number was bound to be a struggle. Kim Minjun's fired up and ready to go all in. After a bumpy ride full of dumb conversations and sky-high delusions, they finally rolled into the 105th Division base in Gapyeong, Gyeonggi-do. Once there, they were ushered into written examination room 7, where the hunters took their seats and got ready to face the test. Invigilator Kang stepped up and announced the results, saying everyone had passed the written exam, except for Cho Jong-wook from the 2nd Battalion of the 104th Division. All the other hunters were told to head to the practical examination room right away. Cho Jong-wook stood frozen, clearly stressed out as the others filed out around him. As soon as the room emptied, Kang let loose, yelling at him for failing an exam that's supposedly easier than getting a driver's license. He called him a fool, and his voice rang loud enough to echo through the hallway. Outside, the hunters burst into laughter at the brutal scolding. Minjun stood there with a satisfied grin while the rest cracked up, and among them, the woman named Sun Yunseo quietly watched the group go. Over in the practical exam room, Lieutenant Colonel Lee Cheolju, the official in charge of the entire advancement process, addressed the gathered hunters. He welcomed both the examinees and the examiners on behalf of the 105th Division and acknowledged the hard work it took for everyone to make it this far, setting a serious tone for what lay ahead. Lieutenant Colonel Lee Cheolju went on to explain that the purpose of the exam wasn't just to determine who deserved a promotion. It was also about fostering a spirit of friendly and fair competition between the three divisions. While he spoke, the hunters began shifting in place, some already spacing out or fighting off yawns. But the moment he mentioned that this year's advancement exams included participants under a special exception, the room perked up. He named them Private First Class Kim Min-jun and Private Sun Yoon-seo from the 104th Division, both hunters who had enlisted less than a year ago. Kim Min-jun blinked, wondering if there was someone else beside him, just to be sure. The colonel then asked if everyone was familiar with the 104th Division and warned them not to stir up unnecessary misunderstandings. One of the hunters muttered that it was true, that one could get special exceptions if one applied to the front lines with top-tier grades. A few guys during his enlistment year had been offered the chance too, but as far as he knew, they'd all turned it down. Then the moment he realized they were talking about the 104th Division, his words stopped cold, and his face shifted to surprise. Everyone around him looked just as stunned when they noticed that Kim Min-jun had already reached the rank of Private First Class. Amidst the rising whispers and side glances, one guy couldn't help but notice how Kim Min-jun didn't seem to care at all about being the center of attention. While everyone else was either curious or shocked, Min-jun looked like he just wanted to get it over with. At the same time, Yoon-seo and Min-jun briefly locked eyes, but just for a second. The air between them was tense, but no one around seemed to catch on. Then, the colonel reminded everyone to give it their all. Then Captain Jong Sang-cheol stepped forward, took charge of the group, and announced that they'd now begin the stat tests, starting with strength, agility, and stamina. Captain Jong Sang-cheol explained that the first test would be the strength test, and it was pretty straightforward. All they had to do was push back the examiner standing in front of them. Lee continued, saying they had 1 minute to complete the task, and would be graded on a scale of 100, with full marks going to anyone who could move the stone 10 meters. The stress in the room started rising as he called for the first participant, Private Kim Jin-hyuk of the 103rd Division. Jin-hyuk stepped forward and gave it his all, but the examiner didn't budge an inch. He couldn't even twitch the stone, and just like that, he was slapped with a score of 0 and instantly disqualified. Lee reminded everyone firmly that anyone who scored under 40 would be out of the advancement exam entirely. That sent a wave of panic through the rest of the group, and suddenly everyone started realizing just how tough this test was going to be. Then Jang Wonho was called. He gave it a shot, but only managed 10 points, getting disqualified. Lee Miju went next and scored 20, also out. Jong Yuna followed with 0, and Jang Doan wasn't far off, ending up with 15, both disqualified. Then came Sun Eun-seo from the 104th Division. She stepped up calmly and pushed with steady force, scoring 50 and passing the test. Everyone around her was taken aback, not just because she passed, but also because she was stunning. The moment they realized she was the daughter of the division commander, it clicked for most of them. Strength must have been in her blood. A few even muttered that getting too close to her might be dangerous, for their pride and their ribs. Kim Min-jun noticed her too, thinking she was just like him, someone who got in through a special exception. Then his name was called, Kim Min-jun of the 104th Division. As he stepped forward, he reminded himself not to repeat his previous mistake with the red stone. This time he had a plan. If he could push the examiner past the 10-meter mark, maybe he could even snag some bonus points. He positioned himself with quiet confidence, eyes locked on the target, and then exploded forward with pure brute force. The examiner flew back like a rag doll, crossing the full 10 meters without a chance to resist. The score came in as a perfect 100. Even the examiner looked stunned, like he'd just been hit by a truck wrapped in a military uniform. The room went dead silent. Everyone was floored. Even Sun Eun-seo, who rarely showed emotion, was visibly surprised. Private Yu Jonghwa gets disqualified with just 20 points, and she bursts into tears. The tension in the air is thick. Everyone's feeling the pressure, wondering why this test is so brutal. Sir Jong steps up and tells everyone to quiet down. He announces that the strength stat test is now over, and they'll begin the agility stat test immediately, no breaks allowed. He instructs those who've been disqualified to exit in an orderly fashion from the rear under the examiner's supervision. Meanwhile, 2 guys come in dragging a netboard. A few others roll in a gun machine, and the recruits start freaking out, thinking they're about to be shot at. Sir Jong reassures them they are not actual bullets, but just rubber ones. Still, he warns, if they get hit, it's going to hurt. He tells everyone to get ready to dodge as their lives depend on it. Kim Min-jun finds this whole thing kind of exciting. Sir Jong explains that the perfect score for the agility test is awarded to those who last a full minute. Now Seo stands prepared to start this machine running. They have to stay within the zone, or else it's over. The whole squad is on edge. Then Sir Jong adds that since this is an agility test, they'll also acknowledge anyone who tanks all the hits but still manages to stay in for a minute. For the disqualification criteria, Sir Jong explains that anyone who steps outside the area in under 30 seconds or gets severely injured will be immediately disqualified from the advancement exam. With that, he announces the start of the agility test. Right then, Dongjin walks up and calls out to Min-jun. The lad looks utterly surprised, and Dongjin smirks, asking if Minjun really thought he'd get disqualified during the strength stat test. Minjun laughs awkwardly and says, "Of course not." Dongjin explains that all the private first classes, except for Minjun, have taken the advancement exam at least once before, so they're unlikely to get knocked out during the stat tests. However, he adds that the qualifications remain the same. It's just that the overall score standard has gone up compared to when they were still privates. That's why Dongjin's been failing his exams. Then he gives Minjun a tip that the rubber bullets fly just as fast as real ones, so relying on sight alone to dodge is a bad idea. Instead, he should focus on the slightest movements of the gun to predict the bullet's path. Suddenly, Sir Jong announces that Private Yoon Kitai has been disqualified and orders the examiners to escort him to the infirmary. Minjun starts thinking about how brutal the stat tests are. So many people are getting knocked out before even reaching the real combat portions. No wonder the pass rate is so low. Still, making it this difficult actually makes sense. Then Private First Class Ji Youngdo gets disqualified too, and Sir Jong, clearly disappointed, comments on how underwhelming this batch of hunters is. He reminds them this is nothing compared to the Sergeant Advancement exam happening in the room next door, wondering out loud how anyone is supposed to advance like this. Private Son Yunseo gets called next, and the whole crowd goes silent. Everyone watches in awe as she dodges the rubber bullets with insane precision. Sir Jong raises his voice, telling the rest that this is exactly how it's supposed to be done. When she finishes and earns a perfect score, everyone around gasps, clearly amazed. But instead of basking in the praise, she suddenly stops and locks eyes with Kim Minjun. Now standing still, Sparky is completely thrown off. Everyone starts whispering, wondering if they're dating or something. Sparky frowns, trying to figure out what she wants. He starts overthinking that maybe she wants a compliment for her performance. Well, if that's the case, she should ask her family for applause at home. When Private First Class Kim Minjun gets called up, he steps forward confidently, still feeling Sun Yunseo's eyes stuck on him, which makes him even more irritated. But once the bullets start flying, Sparky becomes a whole different beast. Instead of just dodging in place, he charges forward, weaving through the rubber bullets like he's out on a stroll. The crowd loses it, laughing and shouting in disbelief as he keeps moving, and even makes goofy faces at Son Yunseo while ducking and spinning through the fire. She, in turn, stands frozen, totally shocked by what she's seeing. The timer crosses the 1-minute mark, and Sir Jong, whacked out, finally yells out, "Ceasefire." Even someone like him didn't expect such a smooth play from a junior, so he proudly announces that Kim Minjun has achieved a perfect score on the agility test. Everyone regathers on the field, standing straight and focused, and Sir Jong praises them for their solid performance. Later, Jong announces the start of the stamina stat test as the final part of the stat exam. The rules are simple, as they have to enter a dungeon and march through a transforming, empty passageway with a strict 40-minute time limit. The instructions are broadcast over the speaker system. All participants need to get their hands stamped by the examiner stationed at the turning point inside the dungeon and make it back before time runs out. The only catch is that no one tells them how far the turning point is. It's just marching non-stop. Kim Minjun wonders if everyone is seriously pacing themselves already when they've just started. This bunch moves so carefully that it starts to feel suffocating. He thinks about whether it'll be too troublesome if he just runs ahead. That's when Sun Yunseo suddenly dashes in front of him. Minjun blinks, thinking, what does she want now? But then excitement surges through him. It totally looks like she's challenging him. And nothing gets Minjun more fired up than a sudden race. Fired up, he kicks into gear and tries to match her speed, determined to catch up. Everyone around is weirded out, wondering what's gotten into this guy. But in a flash, Minjun finally catches up to Yunseo and flashes her a confident smile, leaving her completely taken aback. Minjun casually says there isn't much to it as he keeps pace with her, but Yunseo doesn't get what he means. He quickly brushes it off, saying he's just talking to himself. Then, without warning, the guy speeds up and dashes ahead, leaving her behind. Yunseo slows down and comes to a stop, catching her breath. That's when a memory flashes through her mind. She recalls the moment her girlfriends got all excited after finding out she had a meeting with the battalion commander right after arriving at the training center. Blondie had confirmed the rumors were true. Yunseo really was the daughter of a general and the rookie with sky-high stats. It was all anyone could talk about. Yunseo had blushed back then, and the girls had been surprised to see that behind her tough shell was someone actually shy. They'd assumed she'd act like a snob being a two-star's daughter, but turns out she wasn't like that at all. Even then, all the girls can't help but feel a little jealous of Yunseo. Her military life seems to be running smoothly as silk, and it's obvious she's going to be the top recruit of their enlistment year. Off in a corner, Yunseo quietly takes off her jacket, her mind drifting back to when Minjun shattered the entire redstone. That moment just refuses to fade from her memory. Later on, the white team comes out on top, with Yunseo raising the blue flag in victory. The announcer proudly announces that the white team wins by capturing the flag in a record time of 3 minutes and 34 seconds. As a reward, they earn a 10-minute break, while the blue team is ordered to gather in front of the coach. The white team is praised straight away for setting a new record at the training center and is told to take it easy and rest up. Blondie then speaks up, giving full credit to their star player, Yunseo, saying the rest of them barely did anything. Later on, just when everyone's relaxing, Blondie bursts in and drops a bomb that someone broke their morning capture the flag record in the afternoon. What ticks her off the most is that the new record time is just 1 minute and 2 seconds. She's left speechless, wondering if anyone could really pull off a time like that. Blondie is seriously disturbed, while Yunseo quietly takes it all in. But the moment Kim Min-jun's name comes up, it hooks her attention completely, especially when Blondie yells that guy, Min-jun from 4th Platoon, broke the record all on his own. Yunseo stiffens, recognizing the name instantly. The other girls don't hold back either, saying that Kim Min-jun got a near-perfect score in the shooting range and even nailed the ICM training. The news spreads fast, and now all eyes are starting to shift toward this rising rookie. Yunseo doesn't say a word, but something about hearing his name again sticks with her. Next, Blondie keeps the gossip train rolling, saying Min-jun supposedly runs like a lightning bolt without even breaking a sweat. Even in her sleep, she won't shut up about how Min-jun apparently hunted down a hound the size of an elephant. Someone finally snaps at Jung-aram to go to sleep. Meanwhile, Yunseo drifts into a memory of her childhood, her father gently patting her head before leaving the house. From that moment on, she made it her goal to become strong like him. Later, Commander Cho calls her in to praise her performance over the last 4 weeks. He says he wants to have a quick word with the daughter of his former superior. Yunseo doesn't mind, so Cho asks where she plans to apply with grades that exceptional, saying any division would be lucky to have her. He wonders if she's considering the 107th Division, where General Sun, her father, currently serves. That's when Yunseo finally asks, with quiet resolve, which division Kim Min-jun belongs to. Back in the present, she knows she didn't apply to this division just for childish reasons. Still, she did provoke Min-jun a little because she was upset. But now she gets why he's mad. Yunseo's face turns completely red, thinking back on all of Min-jun's stunts, unsure if she's jealous or just annoyed. That's when it hits her. Her real goal isn't to be number 1, but to become stronger on her own without relying on her father. She decides she should probably apologize to him later. After all, when someone that's skilled shows up right in her path, she should be learning from him instead of acting childish. With that, Yunseo kicks into full speed, marching hard until she reaches the turning point, only to find that deadbeat weirdo casually chatting with another guy. Right then, Min-jun smugly flashes his stamped hand in front of her face, teasing that he almost fell asleep waiting for her. That pushes all her buttons. She yells at the commander to stamp her already, and the old man has no clue why she's so fired up. Safe to say that apology is definitely off the table for now. Yunseo's inner demon has officially woken up. She's all hyped up, sprinting ahead to catch up with him while the other normies are barely dragging themselves in. Later, the commander announces that Private First Class Kim Min-jun took first place with a record time of 29 minutes. For second place, he names Yunseo, with her time of 32 minutes. Jong bursts out laughing, pointing out how Min-jun nailed perfect stats again, which is just insane. After that, Jong tells the hunters who passed to go eat and then gather at the training grounds by 1 o'clock sharp. Later on, Yunseo heads over to grab her jacket, only to catch Min-jun making a goofy face at her like a total dork, and she's seriously weirded out by this dimwit. Then Sparky jogs ahead to catch up with Dongjin. Yunseo ends up smiling to herself, realizing she totally fell for the provocation and lost this round. With nothing more to say, she slips back into her uniform and walks on. At the 105th Division base, inside the 2nd Practical Examination Center, a bunch of goblins with bat-like weapons are creepily screeching at Dongjin, but he doesn't give a damn. The guy's definitely working up a sweat, but he's tearing through those goblins. Just as one of the goblins lunges at him, Dongjin whips out his sword, but there's another creeping up from behind. He dodges the first goblin's swing with ease, then spins around to kick the one behind him, sending it flying. That second goblin isn't giving up though, and swoops in again, but Dongjin ducks like a pro and slashes it across the chest mid-motion. Even so, the damn thing's still alive and definitely pissed. Now both of them are ganging up on him, giving the poor guy zero room to breathe. Upon the platform, Min-jun quietly observes the scene below. He notes that the second part of the practical exam, Specialty Weapons Proficiency, is way simpler than he thought. All they really have to do is show the examiners how well they've applied the techniques they've learned so far in the Hunter Corps. They just have to follow the manual, and that's enough to pass. Min-jun figures he can easily ace it, and as expected, most applicants picked swordsmanship for their test. Among them, Dongjin scored the highest. Even so, Min-jun can't help but notice how badly the guy's struggling now, caught in a rough spot with those 2 goblins out for blood. In the last part of the practical exam, known as the ability to handle monsters, privates are required to defeat 4 hounds, while private first-class soldiers have to take down 3 goblins using their chosen specialty weapon. This field definitely reflects real combat, as Dongjin manages to defeat the blue goblin with a stab to the chest, and that ends his round. Right then, the commander announces that Dongjin took 7 minutes and 52 seconds to complete the ability to handle monsters test. The guy's drenched in sweat, barely catching his breath, but he walks out with whatever strength he has left. Meanwhile, Minjun notices that Dongjin had several openings to finish off the goblins but hesitated each time, which makes him wonder if the guy doesn't fully trust his own abilities. Later, Dongjin comes out and stands beside Minjun, head low and clearly disappointed. When the commander calls in Minjun for his turn, he doesn't want Dongjin to feel discouraged. Besides, Minjun can't help but wear a smug look, knowing he's about to become a corporal today. From here on, he plans to tear Dongjin's bad habits to shreds and rebuild him from scratch. Everyone's jaws hit the floor when Minjun walks in wielding a bat. The commander doesn't understand why the guy who's been acing everything chose such a dull weapon, and he knows this one won't be easy. Minjun figures the only real requirement for this test is landing some solid impact, nothing too complicated. Right then, 3 goblins storm into the field, snarling and ready to tear him apart. Just as the goblins rush in, Minjun grips his bat tight and in a flash smacks all 3 of them at once. The blow is so clean and brutal, they drop to the ground in pieces, taken out in barely 4 seconds. Everyone watching is frozen with their jaws on the floor, brains short-circuiting at the sheer absurdity of what just happened. No one can believe that a mere private first class just pulled this off, especially one who already got a perfect score in the practical exam. Minjun casually turns to look at Yunseo, locking eyes with her before flashing that smug look of his, just to mess with her. Yunseo glares back, thinking this guy's an absolute lunatic. Afterward, the commander praises everyone for their hard work on the exam, especially Kim Minjun, now officially Corporal Kim Minjun. Commander Jong laughs, admitting this guy's moving up the ranks so fast they keep forgetting what to call him. Jong does mention he was a bit worried since Minjun was the only one from their battalion who advanced this time, but their battalion commander is absolutely thrilled with the report. With that, he gives Minjun a proud thumbs up, knowing full well that the battalion commander hadn't seen a private first-class score that perfectly before. Meanwhile, the entire squad erupts in cheers for Minjun, the guy who pretty much saved their skins, because without him, their squad would have been wiped out before they even made it back. They joke around, letting him know there's no way he's allowed to turn into a bully if he ever makes sergeant. But deep down, Minjun wants to see how well everyone actually does before deciding what kind of treatment they'll get from him. Aside from that, he pats Dongjin's shoulder, while this guy's already cooking up ways to level up his buddy no matter what. As soon as they return, Minjun's planning to start training with their specialty weapons right away. Then, he senses someone standing behind him and turns around to see Unseo. He knows she did pretty well handling the monsters herself, and figures she obviously has what it takes to pass the advancement exam too. While the bus is getting loaded, Unseo stays outside, and Minjun is a bit confused about it. She's thinking this might be her chance to finally apologize for how she acted during the stat test. But right then, Minjun presses his face against the window, mouthing a few words that totally shake her. He tells her that if she provokes him again, she's dead meat. And with that, the bus takes off, leaving Unseo frozen with a storm of mixed thoughts, convinced that guy is one crazy jerk. On their way, the whole bus loaded with hunters keeps asking Minjun if there's something going on with him and Unseo. The girl's been checking him out all day even during the stat test, like she is interested in him. The guys are pulling Minjun's leg for having an admirer, and they are eager for him to spill the tea. But Minjun doesn't give a damn and doesn't even look remotely interested, saying Unseo provokes him. That's the only reason he trampled her a bit. All the lot cracks up, knowing the look in her eyes was actually provocation. But that's not it. The dudes want to know more. They are itching to hear what Minjun did to the hottest recruit in the 104th Division. Meanwhile, Han Young demands to know if he just trampled the girl of his dreams. Minjun finds this bunch super annoying, confessing that Unseo isn't his dream girl. Han Yoon, who is totally pissed, demands to know Minjun's dream girl, and Minjun spills that it's Lumi. Everyone's thinking Fee that name even clicks in their memory, but they haven't seen her anywhere. One asks if she is an idol. Minjun calls Lumi to be the dungeon power fighter's greatest beauty. When asked if anyone knows her, the whole hunter squad is eyeing Minjun with disgust. Later that night, the squad digs into fried chicken like there's no tomorrow, and more boxes keep rolling in from the lieutenant. Sergeant Cho is convinced this is the first time Kim Minjun's ever looked this happy, and Minjun doesn't deny it. Cho thanks him out loud, saying it's all pretty much because of him. He's especially hyped that the guy's got 3 stripes already, which means he's only a step away from becoming a sergeant. Minjun agrees with a mouthful of chicken, washing it down with Pepsi like a champ. Right then, Sergeant Seung-ho rolls in with the bottle cart, calling all second squad members to gather in the lounge right away. Everyone knows something's up, and Seung-ho confirms it's about the report he just submitted to the admin office regarding their squad's second sinner. But what really matters is that thanks to a perfect score in the advancement exam, they've scored some beer. Sergeant Cho and Kim leap out of their seats with pure joy, refusing to let Minjun enjoy it all to himself. Seung-ho butts in, saying the beer is actually a gift from the company commander to Min-jun, so technically it has nothing to do with anyone else. That instantly riles up the whole squad, with everyone grumbling that Seung-ho is getting on their nerves. Sergeant Cho calls him out, saying Seung-ho probably knew about all this from the very beginning, which is exactly why he kept Min-jun in his squad from day one. Later that night, Min-jun is out trolling by himself and takes the chance to summon his Nightwalker. He makes small talk with the little guy, asking if he's doing okay. Honestly, he was pretty flustered the first time this thing appeared during a summon, but now Sparky's got a clear plan. He doesn't really need an assassin. He's got the perfect job in mind instead. From here on out, he assigns the little one the task of gathering intel. Specifically, Min-jun wants it to keep a close watch on the high-ranking officials, follow them around quietly, and immediately report back on anything weird, especially if it's related to demonic energy. Suddenly, the Nightwalker lifts its tiny hand, leaving Min-jun confused for a second, until he realizes the little guy is asking for a treat. With a sigh, Min-jun tosses him a ball of demonic energy. The moment it grabs it, the little shadow looks absolutely thrilled, walking away like it's got a mission from heaven. Min-jun warns it not to get caught, though deep down he's a little anxious seeing how excited the Nightwalker is. He knows if anyone from the squad spotted it right now, they'd probably trigger a full-blown emergency. Out of nowhere, Sergeant Kim appears and asks what Min-jun's doing out here. The dude nearly loses his soul from shock, but he recovers quickly, laughing it off and saying he just needed some fresh air, plus it's been ages since he had a drink. When Kim asks if his tolerance is low, Min-jun casually explains it's not like that. Apparently, dark mages don't get drunk the normal way. Whether it's poison or alcohol, their bodies naturally detox it all the moment it enters. Besides, the guy congratulates Min-jun for advancing ahead, but warns him not to get too comfortable. He also tells Min-jun not to come in late again, even if his tolerance is fine, because the rest of the squad will empty all the bottles by then. After that, Min-jun finally catches his breath, feeling relieved that Seung-ho didn't see anything. He knows he's got to be more careful around here. Still, the more Min-jun gets to know Seung-ho, the more he feels like this guy is a total by-the-book soldier, not that he minds that kind of personality. The next day, the commander is talking about how Kim Min-jun was practically born ready. He jokes that he was ready to wipe out the whole squad if nobody passed, but one guy made it through and did it with a perfect score. Another officer adds that Corporal Kim Min-jun just set a new record of 4 seconds in the ability to handle monsters test. That makes the commander laugh, remembering how he once thought the training center's Commander Choi was nuts for hyping this kid up. But Min-jun has shattered every expectation. He even handled the middle bat situation solo. Seo brings up how Min-jun was the first to jump in during the oil reserve emergency, and Lee points out that this kid climbed ranks to corporal in just 1 month, which is already unheard of. They all agree. This guy doesn't just meet expectations, he destroys them. It won't be long before the entire Hunter Corps starts watching him. This makes Seo realize that Lee is hinting at the Hunter Special Forces Brigade, and he asks if Min-jun can really handle something that big. But Lee is confident. He says Min-jun is the one. He can feel it. He's seen plenty of hunters in his time, some even called legends in the Hunter Corps, but this kid might just be something else entirely. Maybe a new monster is about to be born in the Corps. Later, out in the desert, a swarm of lizard monsters, goblins, and orcs fill the horizon. In the middle of it all stands Min-jun, casually gripping his bat, waiting for them to get close because that's when the real show begins. Inside the dorm, the guys are drinking hard like there's no tomorrow. One dude can't even stand straight. That's when Min-jun walks in, catching sight of his squad mates completely wasted in the corner. One guy, clearly on the verge of a hangover, slurs out a question, asking if Min-jun's feeling okay. Sparky just throws him a smug grin and says he's totally fine, which leaves the guy stunned. He can't believe that after drinking so much, Min-jun is still standing tall without a single wobble. He straight up calls him a real monster. Just then, Seung-ho walks in from behind, and Min-jun casually asks if he's doing all right. The drunk guy stumbles into a salute for Sergeant Lee, who says he's doing fine after sweating it all out. Min-jun flashes a smile as he looks over Seung-ho's fit build, thinking that this guy really is the definition of a true soldier. On top of that, Seung-ho asks if the kid has checked out the gym yet, and Min-jun replies that he hasn't gotten the chance. Seung-ho tells the kid to start using the gym now that he's a corporal. He adds that the virtual device in their squad is actually pretty solid, so Min-jun should give it a try. The moment he hears there's a virtual device, Min-jun gets a jolt of excitement. Finally time to check out the Hunter Corps' famous VR room. When he arrives at Gym 2, the setup looks crazy realistic, and it's got him fired up. First things first, he needs to pick a monster. He scrolls through and selects the orc monster. But when it comes to the number of orcs, Min-jun goes completely nuts. He maxes it out to around 30. To him, that still feels way too little. He's trying to get that full-on game vibe like he's in the Warrior series. Then it's time to choose his weapon, and Sparky is absolutely losing his mind seeing how awesome the options are. After locking in all his selections, he steps into the VR room, fully geared up, clutching a jockey in his hand, ready to bring chaos. It's time to kick off the battle, and Minjun finds himself dropped into a desert setting, pumped and ready to take on some monsters. The dude is loving the CGI and graphics that look almost too real. Orcs start popping out of nowhere, all geared up to wreak havoc, but Sparky isn't fazed. He swings his bat and nails his first sixer, sending an orc flying through the air. The impact feels incredible, and Minjun is hooked from the first swing. He picks up the pace, smashing through orcs like it's nothing, completely in the zone. The way the bat feels in his hands makes him grin, and he calls out to the monsters to bring more. In just a few seconds, it's all over with only one survivor, Minjun. But that was too easy. 30 orcs is not even close to satisfying. So he dials things up and selects 30 goblins, 30 golems, and 30 lizardmen to crank up the intensity. Now there are 90 monsters of 3 different kinds ready to tear him apart, but Minjun is just getting started. With his bat in hand and a wild grin on his face, he asks if they've all gathered in one spot. Once they lunge at him, he casually counts down from 3 and charges in like a beast, ready to smack every last one of them into the ground with pure brute force. This maniac is smacking monsters left and right without a single pause, beating them to a pulp. The battle wraps up after he eliminates all the monsters, and the simulation ends. Taking off his gear, Minjun is beyond impressed with the VR room system, calling it the next best thing after Dungeon Power Fighter. Just then, a new window pops up, revealing that he unlocked a skill called Basic Blunt Weapon Handling. At first he's stunned, but he checks the screen, which says this skill boosts proficiency with blunt weapons. Minjun is pumped to see this, especially since he didn't expect to get weapon skills just like that. This means he doesn't even need to grind in dungeons to develop new skills. He decides to mess around in the VR room more often, using different weapons to up his game. Suddenly he bumps into Dongjin, whose face looks like he just saw a ghost. When asked, Dongjin, pale as a sheet, points at the simulation battle results. He's in total disbelief that this guy soloed 30 goblins, 30 orcs, and 30 lizardmen. Minjun is annoyed to see the VR room broadcasting his results so openly. Dongjin demands to know if he really wiped them all out. Sparky doesn't know what to say at first, but then he gets an idea. With a serious expression like he's Dongjin's superior, Minjun tells him they need to talk in the gym. Dongjin, sweating bullets, nervously asks why, and Minjun flashes a sly grin, saying it's training time. Without waiting for a response, he shoves the poor guy into the gym, even as Dongjin whines about being hungover. Minjun says it's perfect, since breaking a sweat will help. After they head inside, Kim walks in and is completely floored by the results Minjun just pulled off. Kim Guangshik walks in, asking where everyone is, and specifically where Kim Minjun went. One of the soldiers quickly explains that most of the team went to the storage area to get snow removal tools, but he accidentally calls Kim Minjun corporal, which he shouldn't have said in front of Guangshik since Minjun hasn't been officially promoted yet. Realizing the slip, he panics and rushes off to send someone to call Minjun, saying the platoon commander is looking for him. Meanwhile, Guangshik stumbles across a group of soldiers huddled together, clearly relaxed and having fun. Confused, he asks what's going on, and they casually welcome him and explain they're placing a bet, a full month's salary, on how soon Kim Minjun will get promoted to sergeant. Everyone has their own prediction. 6 months, 8 months, over a year. Guangshik is stunned by how seriously they're treating it and asks why they're always making bets like this. Kim Mungi laughs at Zhong Hanyung's 6-month prediction, calling it crazy and impossible, while the others join in, teasing and enjoying the moment. Zhong gets fired up, yelling that Minjun isn't just some average guy, he's on a completely different level. Kim Mungi teases him for being all worked up, and Zhong snaps back, saying he has no regrets and warns everyone not to back out later. The group bursts out laughing and locks in the bet, each throwing in their guesses with full confidence. Then Guangshik steps in and boldly bets on just 1 month, shocking everyone into silence. Meanwhile, Minjun is in the gym, feeling a bit down because he's been training hard for days but hasn't seen any improvement in his stats. He starts to wonder if all that effort was just a waste of time. Then he remembers that even something as irritating as the Isgard incident ended up giving him a passive skill. One of his abilities boosts his strength by 150%, and he starts wishing he had something like Returned Hero's Strength, a skill that scales with stat growth. Just then, a notification pops up saying he's unlocked a new skill. It's a basic one called Power, and it gives him a boost of 5 to his strength stat. Even though it's simple, he's fired up and knows he can level it up later. As Minjun catches his breath, a fellow soldier shows up and tells him the platoon commander is looking for him. Minjun thanks him and heads out. The soldier watches him leave, a little confused by how calm and focused everyone seems around Minjun today, like something is off. When Minjun arrives at the administrative office, he salutes and reports in as ordered. Kim Mincheol greets him and brings him to the counseling office for a casual chat, asking how life as a corporal is treating him since it's been almost a week. Minjun replies that things are going great. Kim Mincheol congratulates him on the promotion and thanks him again for resolving the Middle Bats incident. Minjun shrugs it off, saying it was nothing. Then Kim Min-cheol gets to the real reason he called him in. He hands Minjun an official certificate, a special award from the battalion commander. It's for handling the incident and scoring perfectly on his promotion exam. Kim Min-cheol jokes that Minjun shouldn't be disappointed by how casually the award is being handed over, explaining that in the Hunter Corps, they prefer to avoid too many formal events. The certificate is an award of excellence, signed by Colonel Lee Junbyom, officially recognizing Minjun's outstanding service. On top of that, Kim Min-cheol mentions that the award will count toward his experience. Minjun glances to the side, wondering if that means he might get another exception later. Kim Min-cheol hesitantly agrees, maybe, but also points out that this award is rare, and not many hunters receive it this early, let alone more than once. Minjun lights up with excitement, tossing out the idea that if he earned 10 awards, maybe he could land another promotion. He blurts it out like it's a stamp card deal, joking about whether awards are like fried chicken coupons, or if there's a buy one, get one free event. Kim Min-cheol gives him a blank stare and questions whether Minjun was even listening. A few days later, the soldiers are lined up, standing at attention with weapons ready. They've been assigned to clear a dungeon, and it's their next real mission. The platoon commander, Kim Min-cheol, reminds them that if they stick to their training, they'll get through it safely without injuries. Today's dungeon is known as the Monster Rat Nest, or more commonly, the Sewers. Minjun stands with his squad, Jung Han-young and Lee Dong-jin, along with other squad members like Jin Cheol-ho. Their commanding officers are also present, including First Lieutenant Kim Cheolman, Sergeant Lee Sung-ho, and Sergeant First Class Kim Min-ji. The Monster Rat Dungeon isn't considered extremely dangerous, but it's still serious because more than 200 monster rats usually spawn inside. On top of that, the narrow tunnels make it tough to use guns effectively. So even though it's not a high-ranking dungeon, it still demands full focus and tight teamwork to clear it safely. What makes this one trickier is that there's only one exit besides the way the team came in, so the plan is to trap the rats by funneling them all through that single route. Kim Min-cheol tells everyone to get into position and prepare the bait. They place it near the second entrance to lure the rats in. The dungeon stinks horribly, so all the soldiers wear the special gas masks issued by the Hunter Corps. One of the soldiers, Ju Seonggi, grumbles about the smell and the rats, saying the monsters feed on gross stuff like rotten bananas, which only makes the stench worse. Even though it's hard to breathe and move around properly, the team pushes through and spreads out as much bait as possible to kick off the plan. The soldiers spot a massive group of monster rats charging in from the front entrance, and everyone immediately gets into position for battle. The commander shouts for the troops to form a line side by side at the entrance and instructs the lower-ranked soldiers to move to the back with the vice commander for safety. Some soldiers start joking around, placing bets on who can kill the most monster rats, with the loser buying snacks at the PX. They even ask the squad commander if he wants in on the bet. Despite the teasing, they stay focused as the commander reminds them not to lose their concentration and to hold formation no matter what. The plan is to fight the rats head-on without breaking their line. Up ahead, Corporal Kim Moon-gi from 2nd Platoon, 3rd Squad, fights off rats fiercely, while right beside him, Corporal Jung Han-young from 2nd Platoon, 2nd Squad, holds his ground. Their squad commander, Sergeant Lee Sung-ho, leads them through the chaos. At the same time, Sergeant Kim Jong-tae from the 4th Squad and Sergeant Cho Tae-wook from the 3rd Squad are in the thick of it, cutting down rats with powerful strikes. Corporal Kim Gwang-shik from the 3rd Squad is also fighting intensely, making sure no rats get past him. As the fight goes on, the officers begin to take note. Sergeant First Class Kim Min-ji, the Vice Commander of 2nd Platoon, and First Lieutenant Kim Cholman, the overall commander, both observe that the troops are doing well, especially a few soldiers who are clearly standing out by quickly taking out rats before they can break through the front line. It shows just how skilled they are, proving that their training and hard work are paying off. Even Private First Class Lee Dong-jin from 2nd Platoon, 2nd Squad, is finally showing the results of his special training and is no longer falling behind. Suddenly someone calls out for help, and another soldier immediately answers, jumping into action without a second thought. But just then, more monster rats appear from the rear. The soldiers quickly shout a warning that the back is under attack. The commander orders the 1st and 4th squads to handle the rear entrance and tells the privates to slowly back away using their shields for protection. He warns them not to overdo it or break formation because they're almost done. Just a little more to go, but something feels off. Through his gas mask, Gwang-shik senses that something is wrong. He realizes too late that something dangerous is coming. Not from the front, but from underground. An irregular monster starts to emerge, and Gwang-shik sees that it's huge, having fed on the other rats, and its size is absolutely terrifying. Frozen in fear, Gwang-shik can't move. Lee Dong-jin tries to shout but finds himself just as frozen. He finally screams at Gwang-shik to get out of the way, begging him to run, to move, to do anything, but it's already too late. Then Kim Min-jun looks closely and notices something strange in the monster's eyes. They look completely blank, empty, and there's no fear in them at all. That's when Minjun realizes the truth. It's overflowing with demonic energy. At the same time, Lee Dongjin gets praised for acting quickly to save Guangxik. Right after that, soldiers from behind shout to Minjun that it's too dangerous and tell him to fall back. They also order all corporals to follow him while telling the rest of the squad to stay ready. Kim Minjun just smirks because, while all of that is happening, he's secretly absorbing the demonic purple energy through the monster's eyes, a dangerous and mysterious power. He's a bit worried someone might notice since using or gaining demonic energy could raise suspicions or even be considered dangerous in their world. That's why he sarcastically thanks Lee Dongjin, since Dongjin's bold move ended up distracting everyone and helped Minjun absorb the energy without being caught. Then, a message appears letting him know that he's absorbed a certain amount of demonic energy and that his demonic energy stat has increased by 1. In the end, Minjun realizes just how much power the monster held, and he says he'll make good use of that energy for the right reasons. Jong admits defeat, clearly impressed. Meanwhile, Minchul Kim confirms that it really was an irregular monster, and the report comes in. All platoon members have now pulled out of the dungeon. Only one irregular monster was confirmed, and it was taken down by a single platoon member. Even though things have calmed down, the buzzing of mosquitoes and the lingering tension serve as a reminder that nothing on the front lines is ever truly normal. Jong walks up to Minjun, sincerely thanks him for saving them, and admits how frozen he felt when he first saw that monster. Minjun brushes it off, apologizing for acting without orders, but Jong quickly reassures him that there's no need to be sorry. It was clearly an emergency, and Minjun's quick thinking probably saved both Guangxik and Dongjin from real danger. After that, Minchul Kim checks in with Minjun, asking if he's hurt, and Minjun confidently replies that he's fine, standing tall and proud. As Minjun lets out a breath, Kim Minchul quietly warns him that they'll need to have a private talk once they return to camp. Jong watches this exchange and notes that the platoon commander doesn't look pleased. Meanwhile, updates come in through the comms. All evacuated members have only minor injuries, and Dongjin has already completed his checkup and is heading back to camp. Guangxik, despite having a few bruises on his head, is expected to recover fully and return by tomorrow. The second platoon is called to attention in response to the unexpected events, and the dungeon clearance operation is officially called off. Everyone is told to check their gear and prepare for departure. Without hesitation, the squad responds in unison. Later, at the administrative office, Minjun is called in regarding the official report. He's told to write down exactly how he defeated the irregular monster and hand it in, but Minjun pauses, unsure of what to write. He jokingly thinks about saying he tried to smash it with his shield, and when that didn't work, he just punched it, though he doubts anyone would believe a story like that. Minchul Kim admits he couldn't see everything clearly because his vision was blocked, but he still asks if Minjun really beat the monster with just his fist. Minjun becomes unsure how to respond and says the monster was full of energy, and he didn't have time to think. Shifting the conversation, Minchul Kim asks about Minjun's stats, and Minjun replies that his strength is 65 and his agility is 60. Hearing this, Minchul Kim is shocked, noting that even as a first lieutenant, his own stats are just above average at 40. He realizes Minjun's stats are more than double those of a typical sergeant and mutters in disbelief, thinking that with numbers like that, Minjun could have easily gotten into the Hunter Military Academy. It feels like a missed opportunity, especially since Kim remembers the records showing that Minjun dropped out of high school, which would have made enrollment tough. Still, he tells Minjun that if he ever wants to become an executive, he should consider taking the GED and applying to a university. He adds that once Minjun reaches the rank of staff sergeant, he'll have the option to travel for classes and take online courses too, and even offers to look into the process for him. Minjun admits that he doesn't really enjoy studying, and feels it's enough to keep advancing through his accomplishments alone. After hearing that, Minchul Kim respects his decision and says he won't push him, but just asks Minjun to let him know if he ever changes his mind. Thereafter, Minjun thanks Minchul Kim, who tells him he'll finish the report and suggests he get some rest, promising he won't forget what Minjun did today. Minjun salutes and gets ready to leave, but before he walks out, Minchul Kim calls his name again and tells him that by saving the platoon, he prevented what could have been a much worse outcome. He even admits that he himself couldn't move during the crisis, and sincerely thanks Minjun. Minjun responds firmly, saying he only did what he had to, though deep down, he reminds himself that all of this was necessary to gain more demonic energy and prove his worth. Outside, Guangxik stands nervously in front of Minjun and asks if he can join the special training sessions Minjun has been doing with Dongjin. Minjun looks at him in surprise, wondering how Guangxik even found out about their secret training spot, and more importantly, why someone who hasn't fully recovered yet would want to push himself like that. Guangxik struggles to explain, then suddenly points to Dongjin and says that he's come a long way and is actually half decent now. Guangxik admits it's probably because of their training, and that's why he wants to join in and start training too. Minjun isn't impressed and asks if Guangxik really thought he could just join like that. He reminds him that there's an order and discipline to these things, especially for someone like Corporal Kim Gwangshik. Gwangshik bows his head slightly and sincerely thanks Minjun for saving him, then turns to Dongjin and apologizes for how he used to treat him. Dongjin is caught off guard and nervously tells him not to worry about it, but Gwangshik continues in a serious tone, saying he's truly sorry for all the hazing and doesn't know if they'll forgive him, but he's being sincere. He explains that due to some personal reasons, he wants to become a non-commissioned officer, and that's why he's determined to train properly with them. Dongjin nervously asks if it would really be so bad to let Gwangshik train with them. He turns to Minjun, hoping he'll agree, but Minjun calmly replies that no, it's definitely not all right. Gwangshik quietly accepts the answer, saying he understands if they feel uncomfortable because of the way he treated them before. He sincerely thanks both Minjun and Dongjin, admitting that he's alive today because of them. Just as the air grows still, Minjun suddenly turns to Gwangshik and says he'll reconsider letting him join if he acts like a pigeon for the next 24 hours. Gwangshik is completely thrown off, shouting in disbelief, while Minjun shrugs as if to say, well, if he doesn't want to do it, that's fine too. Feeling the pressure, Gwangshik hesitantly starts cooing like a pigeon. Dongjin watches, stunned into silence, while Minjun chuckles to himself as Gwangshik continues awkwardly, pretending to be a bird. Saint praises the giant for his hard work and gently asks if he has anything to say, and though the giant seems unsure, he eventually asks how long the Saint plans to keep doing things like this. Saint replies that no one really knows, then offers a gift, saying it's for the one who's no longer with them. Looking ahead, Saint adds that something given from the heart can never be too much. Meanwhile, Sergeant Cho is annoyed that even after returning from a tough dungeon mission, they're already being made to do construction work for the camps. He complains that being treated like this during his final year of service feels unfair. While working, Purple thinks out loud, wondering if these camps even make a difference in monster fights, and Cho just shrugs, saying no one really knows. Just then, a delivery arrives, and Gwangshik announces that it's finally here, Stettel, and explains that they jokingly call it Stettel because no one's quite sure if it's made of stone or metal. The name comes from how confusing and ridiculously tough the material is. As they begin moving it, Gwangshik quickly realizes it's way heavier than it looks, and solid as a rock. They struggle with the weight, and one of the soldiers explains that this is exactly why camps are built with it, because it's so tough and reliable. Gwangshik adds that it's made from a rare mineral found only in specific dungeons. He starts to mention the name, but Minjun cuts in and distracts him, asking if he said something. Gwangshik quickly plays it off, saying it was nothing and just figured someone might be curious. Suddenly, Vice Commander Minji announces a 10-minute break for everyone. Then, with a serious tone, Minji approaches the platoon commander and shares something he overheard while picking up materials from headquarters. There's a rumor that a dungeon known as the Tin Can Dungeon might have appeared in the area controlled by the 104th Division. This immediately grabs everyone's attention. Sergeant Cho reacts in shock, asking if it's true, and Dongjin starts to panic, yelling that if they get sent there again, it'll be his and Cho's third time entering that awful dungeon. Cho complains loudly, saying the situation is getting ridiculous, but Minji tries to calm everyone down and reminds them that an investigation is still ongoing and nothing has been confirmed yet. Meanwhile, Gwangshik quietly mutters about tin can dungeons, explaining that hunters use that nickname for certain types of dungeons that follow a specific pattern. First, these dungeons are much larger than normal. Second, they're packed with more monsters and a wider variety of them. Third, they don't include boss monsters or extremely high-risk enemies. Because of all that, they're considered ideal for gaining real battle experience, which is why divisions often use them for large-scale training known as hunter field maneuvers. Minjun, overhearing Gwangshik mumbling again, asks who he's even talking to, and Gwangshik just shrugs it off, saying he thought someone might be curious. Minjun repeats the name hunter field maneuvers, confused and clearly not thrilled, thinking this doesn't sound like the kind of training he wants right now. He's not interested in long, boring drills, he just wants real fights. But Mincho Kim reminds them all that this is divisional training, it's mandatory, and it's actually a great opportunity to build up accomplishments. As soon as Minjun hears the word accomplishments, his eyes light up, suddenly reminded of his goal to gain recognition and grow stronger. Minjun gets excited, thinking how being stationed at the front lines gives him so many chances to prove himself. He feels proud of his decision to come here because it was the right choice, and everything's working out even better than he imagined. As the excitement about gaining accomplishments builds, Minjun suddenly notices a faint purple glow at his foot, but without drawing attention, he quickly slides his shoe over it and hides it before anyone notices. Dongjin and Cho, clearly exhausted, yell out in frustration and say they don't need any more accomplishments because they're already being worked to the bone in their final year. Meanwhile, Minjun quietly lets out a breath of relief, thinking how lucky he is that nobody saw the glow. He brushes it off and casually shifts focus, thinking the current issue is something about reinforcement requests. Meanwhile, Enseo Sun, the female officer, explains that reinforcements were requested due to an irregular monster, and the request came from the investigative team inside a dungeon that recently appeared in Yanggu. The commanding officer recalls that the dungeon appeared inside a military zone, not near civilians, to which Enseo confirms and adds that 2 members of the investigation team suddenly passed out with no warning or signs. She mentions that this strange occurrence has been happening more frequently and warns that it might be a sign the dungeon needs to be cleared immediately. The officer suggests handing over area control to regular soldiers and pulling back all hunters stationed in Yanggu, redirecting all forces toward a new priority, the dungeon that has opened in the civilian area of Hongcheon. Enseo accepts the order without hesitation. Meanwhile, Minjun watches this unfold and smirks to himself, thinking it looks like the perfect opportunity has just landed in his lap. Feeling like everything is aligning in his favor, Minjun decides that he's going to request a day off. Minjun double-checks his bag, wondering if he packed everything he needs. As he moves ahead, Minchul Kim spots him and casually asks if he's heading out already. He also mentions that he noticed Minjun carrying way more steetle than the others during the camp construction, and now it all makes sense. Minjun wanted to finish early so he could use his day off. Half impressed and half annoyed, Minchul tells him that he really is something else. Minjun smiles and thanks him, but Minchul quickly clarifies that it wasn't exactly meant as a compliment. Then, pointing to the form, Minchul notes that Minjun's registered home address is currently in a restricted area. Curious, he asks where Minjun stayed the last time he left, and Minjun replies honestly that he stayed in a PC room. As expected, Minchul pulls out a key and tells Minjun that if he's okay with it, there's a place he can use, an apartment that belonged to his parents, currently empty while they're away on business. It's kept clean since Minchul visits during his own breaks. Minjun tries to politely decline, saying it's not necessary, but Minchul cuts him off firmly and insists that this time, it really is. Quietly, Minjun reads the small note handed to him earlier. It says the apartment is a bit far from the camp, but still within Gangwon-do, located in Chuncheon at XX Villa. Minjun thinks to himself that it's definitely better than staying in a noisy PC room. Chuncheon isn't too far, so it's not a bad option at all. He also recalls what First Lieutenant Minchul said, "Take the key even if you don't use it, just get some proper rest." Minjun folds the note and puts it away. As he does, Minchul glances down at Minjun's info sheet. His name is Kim Minjun. His listed address is Gyeonggi-do, Nim Daehyun. Both of his parents, Choi Yoonju and his father, are marked as missing. Meanwhile, Minjun arrives at the Yanggu County bus terminal, where nearby soldiers are talking about a dungeon that recently appeared near an old abandoned school. They're instructed to stay at least 1 kilometer away and focus on securing the perimeter. Minjun stands quietly off to the side, listening without drawing attention. His eyes fix on a distant silent building that must be the dungeon. As he approaches, he wonders what kind of creature he'll face this time, annoyed that the person who sent him didn't even bother to check what kind of monster it was. Typical. Minjun tells himself that if things get too risky, he'll just turn around and leave. The moment he steps forward, a faint glow flashes across his vision, and a message confirms that he's entered the dungeon. The air inside is thick and sticky, unusually humid, and the walls are cracked with the ground torn up, signs that something violent happened here. He spots a shattered object nearby and knows immediately that a battle took place. He can also feel someone or something watching him. Without missing a beat, Minjun calls it out, telling it to show itself. The monster steps forward, and Minjun studies the massive creature, unsure if it's a goblin or a kobold, but whatever it is, it's way too big. He's honestly shocked the investigative team managed to survive an encounter with something like this. Without waiting, Minjun charges in, mocking the monster for surviving its earlier fight, then activates his corruption skill. The monster doesn't even flinch, it doesn't block or react at all. Minjun compares most of his previous enemies to ants, but this one feels more like a giant beetle. Still, a bug is a bug, and with frustration bubbling up, Minjun glares at it, launching one last attack while shouting for payback for ruining his brand new clothes. After defeating the monster, Minjun suddenly receives a system message saying he has absorbed more demonic energy, and his stat increases again. Another message follows, and his demonic energy stat goes up by 3 times in a row. With that, Minjun finally crosses a threshold and unlocks a new skill, Dark Arrow. His Nightwalker skill also gets enhanced, and on top of that, he gains basic swordsmanship. Excited, Minjun quickly pulls up his status window. His stats now read, Strength 65, Agility 60, Stamina 60, and Demonic Energy 22. He grins at the sight of the new skill, Dark Arrow, which allows him to attack from a distance using demonic energy. Exactly what he needed. But what catches him off guard is the basic swordsmanship. Then it clicks. It must have come from landing that critical hit during the fight. A lucky moment for sure. As Minjun thinks back, he remembers a strange shine he saw just before the battle. Curious, he walks over to investigate and spots something. It looks like either the tip of an arrow, a piece of a broken sword, or maybe something the investigative team left behind. The shape and color feel oddly familiar, like he's seen it somewhere before. As Minjun holds the object, monsters begin coming from behind. Another thought hits him. He's just unlocked a new skill and hasn't even tried it yet, and the timing feels perfect. Looking around the dungeon, even though his mission is officially done, he decides to stay a bit longer because it wouldn't hurt to clean up the leftover monsters while testing out what his new power can do. After clearing the dungeon, he feels proud and relaxed. Plus, he's excited to finally have some free time, so he decides to play his favorite game, DPE. It seems like the perfect way to wrap up a productive day. His day off feels satisfying and well spent, but that peaceful mood doesn't last long. As soon as Minjun returns to camp, he senses something is off. Everyone looks serious, and the energy around the platoon is heavy. Jong quickly informs Minjun that it really is a tin can dungeon, and next week they'll be doing a large-scale real-life training session called the Hunter Field Maneuvers. Every platoon will start from different random points and work their way to the center of the dungeon. The goal is to respond to sudden emergencies, fight monsters, and survive the pressure of real combat, and no one gets to relax. Everyone has to stay alert and battle-ready. As the exercise begins, Minchul Kim shouts commands to take positions on a hill. Suddenly, dark balls appear, monsters that float and have thick, durable skin. These creatures are tricky because melee weapons don't work well on them. All troops are ordered to put away their specialty weapons and use firearms. They begin firing non-stop to stop the dark balls from getting closer, but Minjun finds it all thrilling because this kind of training is exactly the kind of dangerous action he enjoys. Minji warns everyone that if those monsters get too close and start sucking blood, they'll become almost impossible to stop. If any soldier gets bitten, it's pretty much over for them. Minjun realizes that if too many people get injured or taken out, their platoon's score in the training will drop badly, and that's not something he's willing to let happen. After that, Minjun gets serious and calls out for Sergeant Lee Sung-ho. While running across the battlefield, Minjun's foot suddenly slams into a black monster that appears in his path, and the impact is so strong and fast, the creature shoots straight up into the sky like a kicked ball. Everyone around him freezes for a second, watching the monster disappear into the clouds above. Afterwards, Minjun wishes he could just use his dark arrows to shoot down the floating monsters, because that would make things a lot easier. Meanwhile, the commander, Minchul Kim, gives the loud order for all troops to fire freely at the dark balls in the air. As the battle calms, they finally get a short break, and the troops are told to rest for 10 minutes, check their gear, and report any injuries in their squads. During the rest, Sergeant Cho feels drained and mentions how this session feels way harder than the last one, wondering how many battles they've already gone through. In-ho Choi replies that he isn't exactly sure, but brings up a strange rumor. Some people are saying this dungeon might not be a typical tin can dungeon after all. That surprises Sergeant Cho, who asks what he means. In-ho explains that the rumor is there's actually a boss monster hidden inside, which shouldn't be the case for this kind of dungeon. Word is, the creature was captured alive and locked away somewhere in the central assembly area. As the break ends, Minji calls everyone back to training, and the soldiers follow orders. Moving forward, Minjun suddenly spots someone in the distance, a Hunter Corps soldier wearing 2 stars on their uniform. Minjun immediately recognizes him and knows exactly who he is. The scene then shifts to a giant figure returning with a broken sword in hand. After seeing this, an old man speaks calmly to the giant. Since he returned so quickly, the old man assumes the mission must have been rough, or someone messed up by blindly following that woman's orders. As he examines the blade, the old man frowns at the severe damage, and then asks if the giant has been hunting demonic monsters again. At the central dungeon assembly point, tension starts to build as Lieutenant Colonel Ko Jong-cheol of the 3rd Battalion notices that the number of monsters inside the dungeon is much higher than expected and quietly hopes things stay under control without any serious incidents. Standing next to him, Colonel Jeon Seung-kyun of the 1st Battalion explains that the division commander believes the troops' overall combat ability has been slowly declining, but Ko Jong-cheol worries they might be pushing the soldiers too hard, both physically and mentally. Then Colonel Lee Junbyum of the 2nd Battalion shows up, visibly anxious, and asks if anyone knows where the division commander went. Jeon Seung-kyun just shrugs and says, everyone knows how unpredictable the commander can be. No one can stop him once he sets his mind on something. Still uneasy, Lee Junbyum questions why the commander would even take part in this kind of training himself, and his concern grows when he realizes the division commander went straight to the area where his own battalion members are stationed. That's when Lieutenant Colonel Ko Jong-cheol reveals what the division commander said before heading out, that there's a soldier he wants to see with his own eyes. Min-cheol Kim stares in disbelief. He knows that in these exercises, there's usually a penalty mission where someone pretends to be injured, and that person has to be carried by their squad. What shocks him is who's playing the injured soldier this time. That role was supposed to go to a regular officer from Division HQ, but somehow the division commander himself is lying on the stretcher, playing along. While Min-cheol tries to wrap his head around it, the commander casually tells them to take good care of him. Minchul quickly snaps to attention and salutes, despite still being stunned. Then Sergeant First Class Kim Minji steps forward, explaining by the book that the injured person must be transported properly. Trying to stay respectful, Minji offers to carry him, but the commander cuts him off mid-sentence, reminding everyone loud and clear that they should know his personality by now. Seokyong, the division commander, firmly refuses to be carried, and says he won't participate in that part of the drill, insisting they keep going with the training as planned. Everyone watches in stunned silence. Meanwhile, Minjun can't help but think to himself that this training is absolutely insane, but also incredibly fun. The excitement and surprises don't stop there. The field is packed with all kinds of monsters, each bringing its own danger. And on top of that, the division has set up special traps and challenges, making the entire session feel like a real dungeon expedition, with something new waiting around every corner. Private Jin Cheolho from 2nd Platoon, 2nd Squad, struggles to keep up. Breathing heavily and clearly anxious, he fails to take down a frog-like monster. Just as the creature lunges at him, Minjun steps in and takes it down in a single blow, saving Cheolho from serious harm. As Minjun reflects on the battle, he realizes that even his basic swordsmanship skill, though simple, is helping him hit harder and stay sharper in combat. He starts to think this intense training might be just what he needs to level up even more. Cheolho, still catching his breath, quickly thanks Minjun. From a distance, Seokyong watches the battlefield and admits to himself that this might be the toughest round of hunter field maneuvers they've ever done. Meanwhile, Minchul Kim calls out to the troops, urging them to hang on until the break, and everyone pushes forward with what strength they have left, though it's clear Kim Minjun is standing out more than ever. At the same time, in the northern section of the dungeon, Private First Class Sun Yunseo shows off her skills by taking down multiple monsters on her own. She breathes hard, wiped out from the effort, but just as another girl soldier is about to be attacked, Yunseo charges in and saves her, keeping her safe without hesitation. All the platoon members have managed to reach this point of the training without suffering any serious injuries. Seokyong watches with pride, while Minchul Kim, standing nearby, acknowledges how capable the platoon truly is. When Minchul humbly gives credit to the members, Seokyong reminds him that recognizing and managing good soldiers is also part of a leader's strength. He encourages Minchul to give it his all for the final phase of training, and Minchul replies with gratitude. Suddenly, Seokyong loses his balance. Sergeant First Class Kim Minji quickly snaps at him, scolding him for relying only on his left hand and not supporting himself properly. Seokyong apologizes right away. Nearby, Corporal Lee Sungwoo is approached by a younger soldier who's curious. It's his second time participating in hunter field maneuvers, so naturally someone tries to ask him a question, but Lee bluntly tells them not to ask. As the group gets ready to move out and form up again, the younger soldier repeats, confused, something about the hole, to which Lee confirms it, calling it the dungeon hole. The younger one stares at the large pit ahead, recognizing it as a hole but clearly not understanding its significance. Lee just shrugs and says it's obvious he must have been sleeping during the dungeon information session. Though there isn't much known about how dungeons work, Lee explains that the common idea is this. A dungeon is like a space linked to another dimension through some kind of gate. Even though it's connected, it's not a perfect or endless space because dungeons have borders, and inside them, there are areas where the connection becomes unstable or breaks completely. Those strange and random spots are what people call dungeon holes. Another soldier, slightly nervous, asks what happens if someone accidentally enters one of those dungeon holes or crosses the dungeon's edge, to which Lee admits he isn't exactly sure, but says people believe they'll suddenly be teleported to some random place inside the dungeon, like a sudden pop. Right then, something unexpected happens, and a strange noise and reaction spread across the group because someone appears in front of them. A girl soldier is lying on the ground, helpless. Mincheol Kim quickly steps up and reassures her, saying he already reported the situation to the 4th Battalion and tells her to rest and not worry. The girl, still anxious, asks if her battalion members are all safe, and Minchel gently confirms that yes, they're all safe, and in fact, deeply worried about her too. He adds that the training has been paused to focus on recovering Private First Class Sun Yunseo. Minchel explains that the situation has been officially reported, so training will likely resume soon. Yunseo quietly thanks him, clearly relieved that things are under control. Minji reminds her that with a fractured foot, it's better to rest because hunters must protect their health just as much as they sharpen their combat skills. Minchel adds that headquarters has been contacted and the transfer crew are already on their way. He starts to say that her participation in this session is now over. Before he can finish, Major General Du Seokyong arrives, and his sudden appearance catches Yunseo by surprise because she hadn't expected the division commander to be out here during training. The soldiers fall silent, fully aware of the weight his presence carries. Mincheol Kim informs the general that although Yunseo has no serious external injuries, her left ankle is fractured and she won't be able to continue. Du Seokyong expresses disappointment that there was only a little training left. He turns his attention to Yunseo, waiting for her report, and she explains that during a monster fight, she slipped off a cliff and lost consciousness. When she woke up, she had already been moved, and her words make it clear that she must have fallen beyond the dungeon's inner boundary, likely into a place the team wasn't monitoring. Whether it was a dungeon hole or not doesn't really matter anymore because what truly matters is that Sun Yunseo was found in time. Seokyung feels a wave of relief and calmly acknowledges how lucky she was to be discovered so quickly. Then something clicks in his mind, and he asks for her name again. Upon hearing it, his expression shifts immediately as he recognizes her background. Yunseo is from the 4th Company of the 4th Battalion, and, more importantly, the daughter of Sun Taiho. With that revelation, Du Seokyung calls out to Corporal Kim Minjun. Minjun responds quickly, confused about why he's being singled out, but before he can process anything further, the order is given. He must carry the injured Yunseo. Minjun is caught off guard and hesitates for a second, questioning it internally. But Seokyung's sharp voice cuts through any doubt and leaves no room for debate. Despite Yunseo's protests and confusion, the decision is already made. To the commander, this is not just an order, it's a task that could be counted as a valuable accomplishment. The situation is now under control, and the mission is simple. The injured must be safely transported without delay. Minjun prepares to give Yunseo a piggyback ride. She's visibly frustrated but eventually gives in after Minjun calmly tells her that she can quit the training if she wants, though doing so will reset her training score. Faced with that, Yunseo chooses to continue and politely asks to be looked after. The platoon watches in stunned silence, especially Jong, who can't believe how Minjun still has so much strength left. To them, it doesn't even feel like Minjun is human anymore. Mincheol Kim instructs the pair to follow along at the rear with the vice commander and to report if Nseo gets tired, but Minjun shows no signs of slowing down and clearly doesn't expect to fall behind. At the same time, Minji quietly talks to Seokyung about Nseo getting special treatment just because she's the daughter of another division commander. Seokyung hears this and responds with a calm reminder that there's no rule saying the injured shouldn't be helped. This, too, is part of the training. Minji acknowledges it without further pushback, but then Major General Du Seokyung mutters something under his breath, something harsh, personal, and clearly directed at Sun Taiho. There's no doubt now that a deeper story lies beneath the surface. Minjun keeps walking with Nseo on his back, each step steady despite the awkward weight. The position isn't comfortable, but he doesn't complain. After a while, Nseo offers to give up the training, telling him he can put her down if he's tired. Without hesitation, Minjun says it's fine, and casually adds that she's lighter than Stettel, the heavy material they use during camp construction. Hearing that, Nseo repeats the word with confusion, so Minjun explains it like it's nothing, comparing her to the dense mineral. He even guesses she weighs around 50 kilos, but before he can finish, Nseo cuts him off, clearly embarrassed, and tells him to stop talking. There's a brief silence before she speaks again, calmer this time, saying she'll repay him for helping her. Minjun smiles at that, but in his mind, he thinks a reward from her father would be even better. Trying to lighten the mood, he brings up the weight comparison again, repeating that she's lighter than Statel, and Nseo immediately shouts at him to shut up, her voice echoing down the path. Meanwhile, Sergeant Cho groans to himself, complaining that this training feels like it was switched from normal mode to hell mode, and wonders who made it so hard. Mincheol Kim checks the distance and sees that only 2 kilometers are left. He reminds everyone to stay focused and not let their guard down. The message spreads through the squads and gives them a bit of energy. Suddenly, Corporal Lee Ikjun and Sergeant Lee Gitai from the 2nd Platoon, 1st Squad, report seeing flying monsters up ahead. Mincheol hears the call and immediately orders everyone to prepare, warning them that these airborne monsters won't be easy to deal with. The worst part is that they're facing black rakes, nasty creatures about the size of sparrows, but aggressive enough to tear through skin with their sharp claws and teeth. Hunters might not die from the wounds, but the pain is brutal, and right now, everyone's already exhausted from training. To make things worse, they're still carrying someone injured, and fighting like this is going to be incredibly risky. The black rakes are known for being relentless. Once they attack, they don't stop. Far off, Du Seokyung, the high-ranking officer pretending to be the injured person, watches quietly. His eyes aren't as sharp as they used to be, so he can't even see the monsters clearly anymore. But he understands how hard this moment is for the troops. He's not just observing the fight, he's watching how they react. If they panic or mess up, their training score could take a hit. Visibility is low, everyone's worn out, but none of that can be used as an excuse. They're hunters. Leaving formation to help might feel like the right thing, but doing so could throw the entire squad into chaos. It's better to stay in line and trust the platoon commander's judgment, no matter how hard it gets. Just then, Kim Minjun notices something and suddenly moves forward, catching everyone off guard. The others try to stop him, confused about why he's stepping up while still carrying an injured soldier, but Minjun speaks up and asks for a chance. He knows things can't go on like this. Everyone is reaching their breaking point. Mincheol Kim, the platoon commander, is stunned, but listens and questions how Minjun expects to pull anything off with someone still on his back. Even so, Minjun insists. Mincho reminds him that if the plan fails, they'll retreat immediately, and Minjun is only getting one shot at this. Minjun refuses to hand off the injured soldier and decides to go through with the plan himself. The order is given. Everyone is to fall back and provide cover behind Kim Minjun. Additionally, Mincho gives the order to prepare for open fire, making everyone tense up, and Seokyung reacts with disbelief, questioning if they really plan to take down airborne monsters with rifles. Minjun quietly tells Enseo to hold on because he has no intention of losing anyone. Hearing that, Enseo is in shock, muttering about how insane everything feels, but Minjun stays calm. As a dark mage, he's gotten used to moving in shadows, and this moment feels just like the early levels of a game he knows by heart. He remembers his dark arrow skill. It's low rank, but when used right, it hits hard, and he blends it with his long-range weapon. Without warning, Minjun launches it, and the demonic energy wraps around the arrow like a cannonball, massive and fast. It's way too big to dodge, especially in the middle of a pitch-black night. The monster drops instantly, and Enseo can't believe her eyes. In no time, Minjun brings down the rest, and the battlefield clears. Even now, it feels unreal to everyone watching. Minjun's not just skilled, he's overwhelming, and a quiet understanding spreads through the squad that Kim Minjun isn't someone you can easily compare to. All the soldiers take a deep breath as the fight finally ends, and the monsters are gone, and the area settles into calm again. Then someone announces that all members of the 2nd Battalion, 2nd Company, 2nd Platoon have officially passed the training, and the entire group hears it. The medical team quickly arrives and begins checking the injured, while Minchul Kim looks around at everyone and praises them for staying strong until the very end. Minji reminds the soldiers to stay focused even now, because they'll soon be heading to the barracks to rest. Minjun briefly wonders where people go to be rewarded for their effort, but the thought fades when Minchul Kim suddenly calls his name. In front of everyone, he tells Minjun that he worked harder than anyone else, pointing out how from the very beginning, Minjun acted first, never ran from danger, and showed bravery that really stood out. Corporal Kim Minjun stands proud but feels a little shy as all eyes turn to him. Soneon Seo, still on his back, quietly thanks him and asks if he can put her down now. Later, she also apologizes for causing trouble to the platoon, but Minchul Kim quickly reassures her that no one saw her as a burden and that he's simply glad they completed the training together. Nearby, Major General Du Seokyung watches the scene with a small smile, clearly impressed by the way the platoon pulled through as a team. In the end, despite all the pressure and challenges, the entire platoon completes the training successfully. Laughter spreads among the troops as they finally relax, and more than a few admit that it was all thanks to Minjun, because his actions truly made the difference. Suddenly, Colonel Yu Jihye, the commander of the 4th Battalion, arrives to check on Yunseo and asks about her condition. Yunseo reports that aside from a small ankle injury, she's fine, and Colonel Yu notes how lucky she was, especially after falling into the dungeon hole. Yu Jihye then tells the squad to move her carefully, and they follow orders right away. After that, Colonel Yu Jihye turns to Major General Du Seokyung and requests a private conversation regarding the training. Even though Seokyung hesitates at first, she insists that it needs to happen immediately. Later that night, while most of the camp is asleep, Kim Minjun enjoys a quiet moment. The chef offers him some fried chicken, and Minjun's eyes light up with joy. He asks if he can really eat all of it, and the chef says there's no one else around to share it with since everyone's already resting. Minjun digs in happily, saying he can't let his efforts go unrewarded. The chef brings up the training and confirms Minjun's from the 2nd Platoon of the 2nd Company, then tells him he heard their unit was praised as the best in the entire division. Minjun nods while munching, and the chef shares that he overheard the higher-ups talking about how well Minjun did, especially during the night attack with the Black Rakes. He confirms that Minjun handled them himself and seems genuinely impressed, wondering aloud how anyone could pull off something like that in the dark. The chef continues, mentioning how tough this round of training really was, saying word has spread that around 70% of privates and privates first class across the division gave up midway. As he reflects on everything, Minjun looks down at his food and lets out a quiet gasp of joy, completely taken by how juicy the meat is. The camp stays calm into the morning. Most soldiers are still asleep, enjoying the free time they earned after the brutal training. A few officers talk nearby, saying the exercise went better than expected and mentioning that the division commander was very impressed. He even came to watch the 2nd Platoon of the 2nd Company himself, and everyone agrees that they clearly stood out during the entire exercise. Captain Kim Chi-woo from the 1st Company smiles proudly and says the division commander is cool and not scary at all. Then he pauses, thinking he might have spoken too casually, but another officer tells him it's fine, and he didn't say anything wrong. It was honest but firm, and since the commander had left his post without warning, no one could really argue against it. They also talk about the 4th Battalion commander, and some say NCO feels a bit intimidating, even to them. Still, none of that changes the fact that Kim Minjun made a huge impression, and everyone agrees he did an incredible job. Minjun stayed strong, reacted quickly, and never backed down. On top of that, he did it all right in front of the division commander. Now that things are calming down, everyone starts looking forward to the upcoming monthly meeting. At the headquarters of the 104th Division, Major General Du Seokyung goes over the dungeon cleanup schedule, and everything seems in order, so he moves on to check on Private First Class Son Yunseo. Colonel Yu Jihye informs him that her injury isn't as bad as expected, and confirms it's not a fracture. Her recovery is going well, and by tomorrow Nseo will complete her treatments and return to duty. Seokyung quietly notes that she seems to take after her father. Suddenly the phone rings, and Seokyung answers. A voice on the other end greets him by calling him a bearded bastard. Confused at first, Seokyung asks who it is, but the voice responds like it should be obvious. After a brief pause, the realization hits. It's Sun Taiho, the commander of the 107th Division and Sun Yunseo's father. Without wasting time, Sun Taiho throws down a direct challenge and demands a duel. Instead of answering right away, Seokyung explodes, demanding why this guy would call him out of nowhere like this. Taiho, completely unfazed, repeats his challenge and even lets Seokyung choose the location. Trying to keep it together, Seokyung asks if Taiho is acting this way just because his daughter got injured, questioning how a man like him even has the nerve to call himself a general. But Taiho remains cool, saying that yes, he is a general, and all he really wants is a little workout using the Du Seokyung punching bag, which he claims is much more durable than the usual ones. That line pushes Seokyung to the edge, making him curse under his breath. Still, he admits he feels bad about what happened to Yunseo but insists it was part of the training, nothing to get this worked up about. Just when it seems like things might calm down, Taiho goes in for the kill, casually mocking Seokyung for not even being able to get married, asking how someone like that could possibly understand. That's it? Seokyung's face turns crimson with rage and he snaps. He demands Taiho's location, shouting at him to stay right where he is, because once Seokyung gets there, he won't be laughing anymore. When Taiho doesn't respond, Du Seokyung slams his hands on the table in pure frustration, cracking his phone in the process. The room falls into tense silence. Yu Jihye walks up to him carefully, letting him know that the call ended just now. Seokyung, still fuming, demands she call Taiho personally, but she urges him to calm down, reminding him that Taiho has every right to be upset at this point. That only fuels his anger further. He can't believe even she's taking Taiho's side. Suspicion creeps in as he asks if she was the one who told Taiho about his daughter's injury. But Jihye firmly clarifies it wasn't her. Most likely, the hospital contacted Yunseo's guardian directly. She also explains that Taiho probably found out because his daughter was granted special permission to finish training before being transferred to the hospital. As those words land, Seokyung's rage starts to waver, and guilt takes its place. He realizes he should have at least reached out. He should have explained that he wasn't targeting her specifically, just testing the 2nd Battalion, 2nd Company, 2nd Platoon to gauge how they'd react when one of their own was injured. He sighs, now thinking it's best to clear things up with Taiho properly, knowing this mess came from a serious misunderstanding. Since Du Seokyung's phone is in no shape to call anyone, Yu Jihye dials Taiho herself and puts the call on speaker. The moment Taiho picks up, his voice is sharp and annoyed, already guessing Seokyung is with her. Jihye quickly apologizes for calling him out of the blue, explaining that the division commander's phone is broken, so she made the call instead. With that, Seokyung steps in, owning up to everything. He calmly explains the misunderstanding and sincerely apologizes for his actions, but Taiho isn't ready to let it go. He mocks Seokyung, accusing him of backing out of their duel, then demands to know the identity of the man who carried his daughter on his back. The fact that someone who wasn't even a medic got that close to her clearly doesn't sit well with him, and he warns Seokyung to be ready the next time they meet. Realizing this conversation's going nowhere fast, Yu Jihye ends the call without waiting for more drama. Furious, Seokyung grips the edge of the sofa with white knuckles and shoots her a deadly glare, clearly blaming her for pushing him to make the call. Without another word, he demands she prepare a vehicle immediately. They're going to Daejeon to meet Taiho face to face. Jihye, knowing there's no winning here, stays silent, thinking to herself how ridiculous both these hot-headed men are acting. In another corner of the base, Minjun Kim strolls down the hallway, completely focused on one thing, his free chicken from the cafeteria. But just as he's lost in that thought, he senses something. Turning around, he catches his Nightwalker bouncing around in pure joy at seeing him. As cute as the little guy is, Minjun's had enough of him popping up in public without warning. Without wasting time, he grabs the tiny creature and shoves him into his pocket, heading straight out of the building for a private talk. Out behind the building, Minjun double-checks to make sure no one's around before letting the Nightwalker out. The moment the little guy's free, Minjun gives him a firm scolding, warning him not to show up unless it's absolutely safe. The Nightwalker, hurt but trying to explain himself, says he made sure no one was around and only came because he missed his master. Minjun, realizing he might have been a bit too harsh, softens and summons some demonic energy to feed him. After getting his fill, the tiny creature suddenly points at Minjun. Curious, Minjun touches the little finger, and instantly, a connection forms between them. Through the link, Minjun sees what his minion had witnessed earlier, Hwachin, completely wrecked, radiating clear signs of demonic energy. He's stunned the Nightwalker traveled that far and actually gathered solid intel. Praising him for the incredible job, Minjun watches his little guy light up with pride. But while the Nightwalker soaks in the compliments, Minjun's already brainstorming an excuse to sneak out of base again. As Minjun approaches the dormitory, his mind spins with thoughts. He figures it might look suspicious if he leaves right away, but it also feels like a waste to sit on his vacation days if it's just a false alarm. He's still thankful for the day off he earned last time during the Yanggu operation. Just as he opens the dorm door, he's hit with a burst of noise. Everyone inside is celebrating. The moment he steps in, they all start congratulating him for being selected as the division's best soldier during the Hunter Field maneuvers. They mention an upcoming award ceremony, and, even better, that the whole platoon is getting a day off because of his achievement. Minjun's eyes light up, and he wastes no time asking if he can use his break tomorrow. The platoon commander, not having much room to argue, says he'll check the schedule, and just like that, Minjun scores a day off. The next day, Minjun heads to Hwacheon, but everything feels off. The chaos seems to be over, with some hunters cleaning up, but he can't figure out why so many of them are still around. He's especially annoyed that he fed his minion a boost of demonic energy earlier as a reward, only to arrive after the action ended. Suddenly a voice calls his name. He turns to see a girl pulling down her mask, and it's none other than Son Yunseo. A few minutes earlier, out on the outskirts of Hwacheon's civilian zone, before Minjun even arrived, the girls were already hard at work sanitizing the entire area. Corporal Cha-Marie was getting tired and irritated, still not able to wrap her head around why they had to clean up after their Hunter Field maneuvers. Corporal Yoon Hyeju, more level-headed, figured it was a punishment from the battalion commander since their training results were pretty bad, and judging from the company commander's expression, it wasn't something to take lightly. She told the others to quit grumbling and just get the job done. But Mari was absolutely exhausted, complaining that a monster had to pop out of a gate the moment they wrapped up their training. Still, she admitted they were lucky not to be assigned to the attack team, especially since some people had even lost their homes in the mess. Their attention soon shifted to Yunseo, who was at the end of the road, quietly scrubbing away without a single complaint. Mari walked over to check on her, asking if she was okay and gently telling her not to push herself too hard. True to form, Private First Class Son Yunseo stood at attention and assured her that she was completely fine. Mari couldn't help but be impressed by how quickly Yunseo seemed to be recovering, but still told her to take it easy just in case. That's when they overheard a few murmurs from the other girls, wondering what a male hunter was doing in their area. The corporal girl might not know what's going on, but Yunseo recognizes the guy instantly. It's none other than Minjun. While a few of the girls can tell he's from the same division, none of them seem to know much beyond that. Back to the present moment, Yunseo pulls down her mask, and Minjun is visibly stunned. He never imagined he'd run into her here. Yunseo asks what he's doing in the area, pointing out that, as far as she knows, only his battalion was called in for support. Meanwhile, the other female troops are completely thrown off by the appearance of a male hunter in their zone. With an annoyed look, Minjun replies that he's on vacation. Yunseo gets irritated at that, demanding who in their right mind comes to a recently attacked site while on leave. Her suspicions rise fast and she starts grilling him, asking if he just made that up. She presses harder, questioning why someone on vacation would show up in military uniform. Without answering, Minjun casually hands over a leave form signed by his platoon commander. Yunseo reads it, and, though her suspicion fades a little, she still isn't fully convinced. She hands it back and asks why he would choose to come to a restricted zone like Hwacheon. That question catches Minjun off guard. Knowing full well he can't spill the real reason, he brushes it off with an excuse, saying he had business in Hwacheon, and, when he heard there was an emergency, he decided to check it out. Suddenly, everyone's attention snaps to an unexpected gate that appears behind the troops. It stretches wide in all directions, instantly raising anxiety across the field. They had just finished clearing the area, and now it looks like they're in for another round. One of the corporals quickly orders everyone to retreat to the platoon commander's position. Chaos breaks out as the troops begin falling back, but in the middle of the mess, Minjun does the opposite. He walks straight toward the gate. Yunseo spots him and immediately urges him to evacuate, but he clearly has other plans. Calmly, he gives her an excuse, saying he'll buy them some time while the others escape. Yunseo is frustrated and thinks he's being reckless, especially since they have no clue what might come out of that thing. But Minjun points out that the attack team has already pulled out, and if a monster shows up now, everyone could be in serious danger. In that case, he'll do what he can to stall it, and if things get bad, he'll run. Then he asks if she has any spare gear and tells her to lend it to him. Still clearly worried, Yunseo hesitates, but when he brings up her injured foot, she clenches her jaw and reluctantly hands him her weapon. Before turning to leave, she tells him again, if things go south, he better run. Now that everyone is gone, Minjun finally has the gate to himself and gets ready for some real action. As he walks closer, he reminds himself that some monsters are the type to stay behind in dungeons rather than leaving. Drawing his weapon from its sheath, he hopes this isn't one of those gates that leads to monsters like that. Otherwise, all his excitement would be for nothing. Still, he knows it's rare for such monsters to show up, since most tend to move in groups. Then, just as expected, a slight grin creeps onto Minjun's face when he spots a red boar stepping out of the gate, wrapped in a thick layer of purple demonic energy. One by one, more red boars begin crawling out behind it, forming a pack. While Minjun waves away the awful stench coming off these beasts, they don't hesitate, they all charge at him at once. Without flinching, Minjun braces himself, gets into an attacking stance, and rushes forward. He opens with a series of dark arrows launched from his palm, but to his surprise, they bounce right off the boar's thick skin. Realizing they've got nothing but high defense, he leaps high into the air and comes crashing down with a barrage of sharp, calculated slashes. His blade cuts into their hides, but none of them fall. Minjun narrows his eyes, fully aware that while their outer layer is tough, that doesn't mean their insides are built the same. Because of that, Minjun unleashes a D-rank skill called Corruption, sending waves of demonic energy pulsing out of his body and into the monsters through the cuts on their thick skin. The red boars begin bleeding from within, but still try to charge forward one last time, only to collapse miserably. Without missing a beat, Minjun absorbs the demonic energy from their broken bodies. Just to make sure they're down for good, he slashes across their bodies one final time. As a result, he gains a boost in demonic energy and sees noticeable growth in both his Nightwalker and basic swordsmanship skills. Now that the red boars are done, he waits to see if any more monsters come out. But just then, his face drops as a familiar voice calls out from behind. It's none other than the platoon commander, Ji-yoon, arriving with the other corporals. She grabs Minjun to check if he's okay, while the rest of the female troops can't help but blush after witnessing him take down those monsters on his own. Ji-yoon immediately starts scolding him for acting reckless and fighting instead of reporting the gate's appearance. She demands to know which unit he belongs to and why he's even here. Without going into detail, Minjun hands over his signed leave application and explains that he had some business in the area, but rushed to help when he heard about the emergency. Her doubts cleared, Ji-yoon instructs everyone to move out since the monsters have been taken care of, and the investigation team will arrive soon. As she walks off, the rest of the girls swarm Minjun like bees, bombarding him with questions about how he managed to fight alone. Ji-yoon lets out a tired sigh seeing them all act like fangirls, while Yunseo stands at a distance, quietly observing the chaos. Meanwhile, Minjun's patience is wearing thin, and deep down, he's just wishing they'd all go to hell already. During the nighttime, a loud shout of confusion echoes from the administrative office as the platoon commander gets a call updating him about the recent incident in Huachin involving Minjun during his so-called vacation. The commander double-checks if they're really talking about Corporal Kim Minjun from the 2nd Battalion of the 2nd Company, and the person confirms it. The commander immediately shoots up from his chair in shock after hearing that Minjun handled the monsters all by himself and even volunteered for public welfare work. On the other end, Yunseo's platoon commander, Ji-yuen, explains that while all the gates have been sealed off for now, they're currently disinfecting private homes that were affected, and surprisingly, Minjun is still there helping them. She admits it's the first time she's seen someone act like this. Meanwhile, Corporal Yoon Hyeju and Corporal Chamari are busy watching Minjun from a distance. Hyeju is still struggling to believe he defeated the red boars so effortlessly, considering she heard getting hit by one is like being rammed by a truck. On the flip side, Chamari is totally simping over Minjun and his brutal monster-slaying skills. At the same time, Minjun himself is annoyed that he didn't get the full benefit from killing those monsters. Determined to salvage something out of this mess, he decides to help with cleanup duties to boost his image before heading out. That's when Yunseo quietly walks up behind him, catching him off guard since his head is already spinning with thoughts. Instead of greeting her properly, he immediately says something ridiculous about almost hitting her in the face and tells her to move out of the way, brushing off the fact that she clearly wants to talk. Still, Yunseo stays firm and gets straight to the point, saying there's something she really wants to talk about. After wrapping up the cleanup, Minjun and Yunseo stand face to face, the air between them tense but calm. Minjun asks her straight up why she came to talk to him. Yunseo doesn't beat around the bush. She brings up their first encounter and asks if he really cursed at her from the bus window. At first, Minjun looks confused, but then it clicks, and he corrects her, saying he didn't curse. He just told her that if she messed with him again, she was dead. Yunseo lets out a deep sigh, clearly frustrated but trying to be the bigger person. She admits that she was the one who got pissed first that day, and with that, she apologizes. Surprisingly, Minjun waves it off, saying he's not holding any grudges, and tells her to let it go. As he turns to leave, she stops him again and brings up something more serious. She mentions that there was only one other person to ever get a perfect score on the promotion test. That catches Minjun's attention, and he naturally assumes she's talking about him. But he's caught off guard when she reveals that she's actually talking about someone else, her dad. With a mix of pride and admiration on her face, she explains that her father was the only person to start as a private and earn stars, and wanting to follow in his footsteps, she chose to enlist as a private too. Minjun gets genuinely curious now that he's hearing about someone who achieved something like he did, but he stumbles back a bit, mentally calculating timelines, realizing that the Hunter army only came into existence when the gates started appearing. He was only 7 at the time. That leads him to assume that Yoonseo's father must have re-enlisted as a private after becoming an awakener. Yoonseo quickly clears up the misunderstanding. She explains that her dad wasn't strong back in the day. In fact, he was considered unfit for military service because of poor eyesight and some other physical issues. But after awakening and seeing his body change for the better, he enlisted voluntarily. The pride in her eyes when she speaks about him makes Minjun think that he'd like to meet this man someday. Yoonseo assures him that her father would be thrilled to meet someone like him. He has a lot of respect for strong warriors. Meanwhile, over at the Daejeon 107th Division headquarters, things are getting chaotic inside the Hunter-exclusive gym. The entire building is trembling, and Colonel Lee Sang-jin, the 3rd Battalion commander, looks like he's about to pass out from stress. Yu Ji-hye is also there, completely overwhelmed, unable to get the situation under control. Turns out, it's not an earthquake, it's a full-on fistfight between Taiho and Du Seokyung. The two seasoned warriors are brawling like wild beasts, both of them bruised and scratched up from head to toe. Amid the clash, Taiho throws a mocking comment, asking if Seokyung really came all this way just to drop Kim Minjun's name. That catches Seokyung completely off guard. He didn't expect Taiho to already know about him. But Taiho just chuckles, asking if Seokyung seriously thought he wouldn't find out just because he decided not to mention it. Without wasting another second, the two start throwing punches again like they forgot they weren't in their 20s anymore. Lee Sang-jin is losing his mind, convinced no one can stop them at this point. But right then, Yu Ji-hee jumps between them when she realizes things are getting way too intense. The punches stop, but the two men are still glaring each other down, throwing insults like kids in a schoolyard. Eventually, the madness cools off, and they find themselves outside the building, sitting on a park bench. Yu Ji-hee walks over to Seokyung and delivers a report from the 3rd Battalion commander, saying the Red Boar's gate has been cleared. Seokyung praises her and the commander before she heads off. Once she's gone, Taiho finally breaks the silence, asking straight up what Seokyung's real reason is for showing up. He's convinced there's something more. Seokyung doesn't hold back. He admits he came to promote Minjun to the rank of sergeant. Taiho's calm expression twists into pure rage, clearly furious that Seokyung wants to support the guy who dared to mess with his daughter. But Seokyung fires back, just as angry, making it clear that no one messed with Yoonseo. He tells Taiho to stop acting like a raging bull and start being grateful that Minjun was the one who helped her out in the first place. Taiho reminds Seokyung that Minjun was only recently promoted to corporal, and before that, he got a special promotion to private first class. Seokyung nods and admits he already has plans to raise Minjun to a commissioned officer. Hearing that, Taiho lets out a deep sigh, saying that Gu Hakcheol won't sit quietly and will definitely take an interest in anyone Seokyung values that much. But that's exactly why Seokyung spilled everything. He wants Taiho on his side. A small smirk creeps across Taiho's face, but he says he'll decide after meeting the guy himself. Meanwhile, over in Hwacheon County, a dark figure wrapped in demonic energy appears right in front of Minjun. Minjun is frozen, too stunned to react to what's happening. The man slowly rises to his feet, a twisted smile spreading across his face as he finally lays eyes on Minjun, clearly thrilled to have found him at last. Moments earlier, all the female corporals were seated inside the bus while Minjun stood outside, seeing them off. The girls waved and shouted, hoping they'd meet him again someday. Corporal Cha Marie looked like she was just 1 second away from asking him out, or at least slipping him her number. But Corporal Yoon Hyeju quickly shut that down and politely thanked Minjun for helping them out. While Cha Marie kept bickering with her friend about ruining the perfect chance, Yoonseo quietly exchanged a glance with Minjun. And just like that, the bus rolled off, leaving Minjun behind. Honestly, he felt a bit relieved that he could finally drop the act of playing the nice guy. But as soon as he turned around, the Nightwalker suddenly popped up out of nowhere. The little shadow creature coughed and shamelessly begged for more demonic energy to feed its huge belly. But what it didn't realize was that its master was still mad about the bad intel earlier, so there was no chance it was getting any rewards today. The little minion looked heartbroken after being denied his treat, but his expression changed the moment he sensed something strange. Suddenly, he started jumping and pulsing with demonic energy, sending urgent waves of thought directly to Minjun. Through the signals, Minjun learned that a foreign demonic energy was entering this dimension, not through a dungeon gate, but by breaking through the boundary on its own. Impressed that the Nightwalker could detect such faint traces, Minjun finally understood that maybe his minion wasn't suited for stealth, but had incredible potential as a danger radar. Without wasting a second, Minjun asked the little guy to lead the way. A few minutes later, the two of them reached deep into the forest. As a reward, Minjun summoned a small burst of demonic energy and offered it to the minion. But before he could relax, the air around them started to twist, and a demonic portal cracked open right in front of them. Slowly, a figure began to emerge. The moment the man stepped out and laid eyes on Minjun, his entire face lit up with joy, and he shouted Master Minold with tears streaming down his face. Minjun, however, was not thrilled. He immediately backed away and told the man to keep his distance. But when the guy clumsily tripped over his own feet, Minjun instinctively rushed to check on him. Frustration flickered across his face as he knelt beside him, asking why on earth he followed him here when he was explicitly told not to. The man, still overwhelmed, could only sob with joy, overjoyed to see his master again. Minjun lets out a deep sigh as memories of their first meeting flood back. Back in the other world, this same guy had been on the brink of death, lying helpless in the middle of a deserted dungeon. A monster had appeared, ready to deliver the final blow to someone who had already given up hope. But something unexpected happened. Out of nowhere, a wave of demonic energy tore through the creature, saving him at the last second. When he looked up, he saw Minjun standing tall above him, surrounded by a dark aura. The man immediately assumed he was Master Minold. Minjun had no idea how this stranger even knew that name, but one thing was obvious. The guy was weak beyond reason. Before turning to leave, Minjun had told him to avoid dungeons like that unless he had a death wish. Just out of curiosity, he'd asked for his name, and was stunned when the man said he didn't have one. So Minjun casually named him Li Bonggu on the spot. Now back in the present, Minjun grabs Bonggu by the collar and shakes him, calling him insane for trying to cross dimensions on his own. Bonggu desperately tries to explain that after Minjun disappeared, everything back home started falling apart. The cult was crumbling without their master, but Minjun never asked for any of that devotion in the first place. He never wanted followers or to be worshipped, so why would he tell anyone about his departure? In frustration, Minjun shoves Bonggu to the ground. Bonggu starts bawling, saying the least Minjun could have done was take him along as his right-hand man. Minjun can't even stay angry at the guy's pathetic state. Shaking his head, he sighs again and reaches out, pushing a small amount of demonic energy into Bonggu to help him recover some strength. Just like that, Bonggu feels alive again, and swears to repay his master's kindness with his life. But Minjun doesn't have time for dramatic vows and just wants to know how Bonggu really got here. Dropping the formal act, Bonggu admits that his arrival in this world was a miracle fueled by his faith in Minjun and his desperate desire to stay by his side. Minjun rolls his eyes, tired of the nonsense, and demands the real answer. None of it adds up. There's no way someone with Bonggu's skills could cross dimensions on his own unless someone powerful, like the Saintess, was involved. That's when Bonggu finally explains. After Minjun disappeared, he stayed behind to keep an eye on the giantess because of some strange rumors. Apparently, ever since that day, eerie noises had been coming from the temple every night. Word spread that large numbers of monsters were being caught, but when Bonggu checked for himself, there were no bones, no meat, nothing, just empty space. That's when it hit him. They weren't killing the monsters. They were sending them somewhere else, to Minjun. Hearing this, Minjun is stunned, realizing just how dirty the Saintess is willing to play. Now convinced that she's behind the recent demonic attacks, he wonders if Bonggu knows anything about the strange item he found a few days ago. He pulls out a piece of steel he had retrieved from inside a troll monster. Bonggu takes one look at the shape and confirms that it looks like a broken fragment of a temple guard's blade, most likely belonging to the guard captain himself. On the flip side, Minjun can't stop thinking about how reckless Bonggu really is. What if that gate had dropped him into a completely different world? If he'd been even a second late, he could have ended up stuck in the dimensional gap, dead and gone without a trace. But clueless Bonggu clearly had no idea how close he was to disaster. Shaking his head, Minjun eyes the blade fragment again, his thoughts spiraling. He still can't wrap his head around what the Saintess is really up to, and that unknown is starting to crawl under his skin like a splinter he can't dig out.